"No man shall ever find my tomb." That's what, according to rumors, Cleopatra once said. Rumor has it really wasn't about the gender. She wanted no living soul to disturb her, and I think she meant that no human would ever discover the location of her grave. But, surprisingly, it was indeed a woman who was closer than anyone before to finally discovering the queen's resting place. Meet Kathleen Martinez Berry, a criminal lawyer turned archaeologist. She got so intrigued with Cleopatra's story that she packed her bags and went to Egypt with no official support and even no permission from the authorities. All she had was pure determination to find the queen's tomb. Now, you could say Kathleen had always been ahead of the game. She skipped grades in school, mastered piano, chess, swimming, and martial arts, and grew up listening to top intellectuals debating in her home. And she even got her law degree at just 19, and archaeology was her side passion. She had never actually been to Egypt, never dug up a single artifact. But her fascination with Cleopatra went all the way back to an argument with her father in 1990. That day, she walked into his library looking for a copy of Antony and Cleopatra by Shakespeare. Her dad, Fausto Martinez, a professor and legal expert, casually called Cleopatra a seductress. Kathleen wasn't having it. She fired back, arguing that history had been totally unfair to Cleopatra. The Romans, she said, wanted to destroy her reputation, and for centuries, people had just believed their version of the story. The debate went on for hours, and in the end, her father admitted maybe he had judged Cleopatra too harshly. That conversation changed everything for Kathleen. From that day on, she read every ancient text she could find, especially Plutarch's account of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. The more she learned, the more convinced she became that Cleopatra wasn't just some queen who fell for the wrong guy. She was a genius, playing a dangerous political game to keep Egypt independent. And the more she read, the more she started thinking, what if everyone had been looking for Cleopatra's tomb in the wrong place? That thought stuck with her. When she was caring for her second child, she earned a master's in archaeology. Multitasking. That reignited an obsession that would take over her life, uncovering the truth about Cleopatra. Even though most experts believe that Cleopatra's tomb, along with the final resting place of 13 other Ptolemaic rulers, lies somewhere beneath modern-day Alexandria, Dr. Martinez has a different idea. She believes Cleopatra was buried at Taposiris Magna, an ancient temple dedicated to Osiris, the Egyptian deity of the afterlife. But she still needed an ancient foundation plate. These plates, about the size of a smartphone, were placed beneath important temple structures and often contained inscriptions explaining when and why the temple was built. If she could find a plate that confirmed the temple was dedicated to Isis, Cleopatra's patron deity, she'd have solid proof that this was the right place to look. Nothing could deter Martinez. She excavated the entire temple site, digging deeper than anyone before her. Her team found coins with Cleopatra's name and face stamped on them. It meant Cleopatra had a direct connection to this site. Then, they uncovered something even more interesting: a tunnel used to bring water to people, leading straight from the temple into the Mediterranean Sea. So, if parts of the temple had already sunken into the water, could Cleopatra's tomb be down there too? Martinez needed proof to convince Egyptian authorities to let her search underwater. And, against all odds, she found the missing foundation plate. On it, the pharaoh offered a large area of Nubia to deity Isis. That was it, the confirmation she needed. The temple was indeed dedicated to Isis, proving her theory wasn't just speculation. If one temple was on land, Martinez suspected the second temple, possibly Cleopatra's tomb, had collapsed into the sea. She needed help from experts in underwater archaeology, so she reached out to Robert Ballard, the guy who discovered the Titanic. With support from the Egyptian authorities, she and her team began exploring the waters off the coast of Alexandria. And what they found was mind-blowing. Underwater, they discovered massive stone structures, some standing 6 to 10 feet tall, right where the coastline would have been thousands of years ago. They also found basalt blocks, the same material used in the statues from the first temple. That meant one thing: those weren't just random rocks. They were the remains of a lost city, buried beneath the sea for centuries. Now, we can only wait and see whether Martinez and her team will be able to unravel one of the greatest mysteries of the past left by the outstanding woman that was Cleopatra. Here's some backstory. After her father, Ptolemy VII, passed away, Egypt's throne went to both Ptolemy VIII and Cleopatra, or so it seemed. Cleopatra, just 18 at the time, allegedly married her 10-year-old brother. Yeah, ancient royalty had some different customs, though there's no solid proof of that. But sibling love didn't last long. Young Ptolemy decided he wanted all the power for himself and tried to push Cleopatra out. Forced to flee the country, she didn't just sit around feeling sorry for herself. She raised an army, ready to march back and take what was hers. That's how, at 21, she was already in the Sinai Desert, leading an army and planning her return to the throne. Now, by that time, Cleopatra had already been locked in a powerful political, and not only political, alliance with Julius Caesar. In June 47 BC, she gave birth to a son, Ptolemy Caesar, better known as Caesarion, who, many believe, was Caesar's child. But that didn't stop her from playing by Egyptian royal rules. And her husband number 2, her other brother, Ptolemy XIV. Yep, despite her ongoing affair with Caesar, Cleopatra married yet another sibling, because, in her world, keeping the throne in the family was the name of the game. Now, marriage aside, Cleopatra's bond with Caesar stayed strong. She even traveled to Rome with Ptolemy XIV for a state visit. But instead of playing the role of a dutiful queen, she stayed in Caesar's private villa by the Tiber River. But after Julius Caesar lost his life in 44 BCE on the Ides of March, Cleopatra's political standing became shaky. To make matters worse, her brother-husband Ptolemy XIV passed away soon after, and some suspect Cleopatra had a hand in it, leaving her as the sole ruler of Egypt. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Mark Antony was rising to power as Caesar's presumed successor. Wanting to size up the Queen of Egypt, he summoned Cleopatra, and she did not disappoint. Sailing into town on a lavish barge dressed as a deity, Cleopatra made quite an entrance. Antony was instantly mesmerized, so much so that he left his third wife back in Rome and followed Cleopatra to Alexandria, where their relationship turned into a full-blown royal affair. The two had 3 children together. Together, they waged war against Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, in a battle for control of the Roman Empire. The last time the queen was seen, she was in her mausoleum, dressed in full royal splendor, diadem on her head, lying on what Plutarch called a golden couch. When Antony and Cleopatra lost at Actium, Octavian's forces marched into Alexandria. Cleopatra apparently knew the end was near, so she locked herself inside her mausoleum, surrounded by gold, silver, pearls, and priceless art. Those were the treasures she threatened to burn rather than let the Romans take them. Antony, meanwhile, wasn't going to let the Romans capture him alive. He wounded himself with his own sword, but before he passed away, he was carried to Cleopatra's side. She held him as he took his last breath in her arms. A little over a week later, Cleopatra made her own choice. Rather than face humiliation as Octavia's prisoner, she ended her life. Legend says it was the bite of a deadly asp, though history isn't quite clear on that. At the time, Cleopatra was only 39. Sounds like a rather full life to me.
The ancient city of Taposiris Magna is hidden on the northern coast of Egypt. These days it has very little of its former glory, but what lies beneath it may hold the secret to uncovering a famous mystery, that of Cleopatra, the most memorable Egyptian queen in history. The recently discovered tunnel is also known as a geometric miracle for its time. Excavations have uncovered a 43-foot-long structure below the ground, which is partially submerged in water. Its shape and construction technique are similar to that of the Eupalinos tunnel, another amazing ancient discovery. This one is located in Greece and was built by excavating simultaneously from 2 points, aiming to have them meet in the middle. The use of math and geometry to make this construction was astonishingly precise for those days, more so since it was built near a mountain. Archaeologists that have been working on the Taposiris Magna site since 2004 believe this tunnel may lead to the lost tomb of Cleopatra. The clues they found so far seem to back up this theory. For starters, the city and its temple were built by one of Cleopatra's ancestors, Ptolemy II. All the architecture seems to indicate it was dedicated to the ancient spirit Osiris and his queen Isis. Throughout her reign, Cleopatra did try to associate herself with Isis, so it may be no surprise she chose this location as her final resting place. Scientists have yet to pinpoint Cleopatra's tomb, but research continues with the help of modern technology. To study this location better, archaeologists have even used a special device called ground-penetrating radar. This tool allows us to analyze what lies beneath the ground without being intrusive. Since this tunnel is so old, research needs to be done very delicately. Seeing pictures of what's underground before you start digging is incredibly useful and has been done here since 2011. Finally discovering Cleopatra's tomb may help us piece together her story, especially what might have happened during the last portion of her life, which is still surrounded by mystery. We still don't know the exact cause of her passing. Some believe she may have let herself be bitten by a poisonous Egyptian cobra. Others have suggested that she was well accustomed to toxic substances, even hiding some in her hairbrush in case she ever needed it. But that's not to say she chose to use it on herself. We do have a lot of other interesting information on Cleopatra that's equally as impressive, like the fact that she had a stylist. Most of the images you've seen depicting this famous queen show her wearing black eyeliner. This look was put together by Airas, a woman known to have been her personal beautician. She traced the long line from her eyes to her temples, a makeup technique still used today to enhance the eyes. Airas was an important figure throughout Cleopatra's life, known also as her confidant and close friend. There are even theories that suggest Airas was there by her side when she passed away. Despite her well-thought-out looks, Cleopatra wasn't as pretty as she's described. Or at least, that's what recent research has pointed out. Sure, if we look at movies and modern imagery, she's depicted as this incredibly beautiful woman with symmetrical and delicate features. However, if we look at coins showcasing her image from back in the day, her looks are rather average. Her image on the coins might have been adjusted, too, to make the queen look stronger in the eyes of her people. So there is no trusted source available to confirm her image, but her description in most pieces of ancient literature speaks of her other qualities, like her voice and personality, not of her beauty. Cleopatra might have been the most famous Egyptian queen to this day, but she wasn't the first choice. She did have an older sister, Berenice, that was initially supposed to take the throne. Berenice passed away before she could do that, so Cleopatra took on the role and began investing in her education. She traveled throughout the country quite frequently, so she could become accustomed to her people and their needs. She was only 18 when the responsibilities were passed down to her, and immediately gained popularity because of her intelligence and education. Her taste in literature was quite good too. She was known to be a fan of Homer, the famed Greek philosopher and poet. Cleopatra loved to write as much as she loved to read. There are even claims that she wrote a book on medicine and cosmetics, but we have no evidence to this day that such work ever existed. Part of being a great leader back then meant you had to speak multiple languages. Cleopatra clearly understood that, and that's why she's rumored to have known many languages to varying degrees. Some archaeologists suggested she spoke Greek, Egyptian, and Ethiopian, as well as many Arabic dialects. She might have even spoken Latin, but there's little evidence to support this claim. She might not have had angelic looks, but Cleopatra was really careful with the way she looked, even with her diet. She was known to have enjoyed simple meals, including a variety of fish. Since she lived close to the Mediterranean Sea, it's really no surprise. As a treat, she liked to eat stuffed pigeons, which she also served to her guests. Other dishes on the menu included vegetables and fava bean soup. Fruits and nuts weren't missing from her diet either, and she was also a big fan of honey. Recently, a team of experts has even tried to recreate her famous perfume. Think of it like the ancient equivalent of Chanel No. 5. Cleopatra was known to be a fan of luxurious scents, which she believed could even influence how people treated her when they met. The basis of this scent is myrrh, a resin gathered from a local tree. Other ingredients added to the mixture were also found back in the day, like cardamom, olive oil, and cinnamon. The results may not be quite as delicate as the perfumes we know and use today. Its consistency was way thicker, and the scent lasted way longer. When she was at the height of her power, Cleopatra might have been the richest person in the world. Back in the day, she ruled over a territory that stretched across the Mediterranean, from modern-day Libya in the west through Egypt to Syria in the east. This is the largest territory ever ruled over by a woman. In today's currency, her worth might have been somewhere around $95 billion. The calendars we use today may have been introduced by Cleopatra herself. She presented the idea of leap years and leap days to Caesar, the Roman emperor she was known to have been close with. Taking her advice, Caesar made these adjustments part of the official Roman calendar. The ancient Egyptians already knew the year was longer than precisely 365 days. They discovered this by studying the brightest star in the sky, called Sirius, and concluded that a year is actually 365 1/4 days long. It was Elizabeth Taylor that famously introduced Cleopatra to pop culture when she played her in the 1963 film bearing the same name. Up until that point, it was the most expensive film ever made. It was originally supposed to cost somewhere around $2 million, but ended up costing a mind-boggling $44 million. That's mostly because of script and production issues. To make this iconic movie, producers created 79 sets from scratch, as well as over 26,000 costumes for the cast. Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra costumes alone cost somewhere around $200,000. Thankfully for the producers, the movie made headlines and was well received by critics, making it a box office success. A lot of people associate Cleopatra with another famous Egyptian ruler, King Tutankhamun, nicknamed King Tut. Surprisingly, apart from both of them being Egyptian pharaohs, they have nothing else in common. For starters, King Tut lived around 1,300 years before Cleopatra did, and there is also no connection regarding their ancestry. Cleopatra had Macedonian Greek roots, while King Tut was a native Egyptian.
Something strange is lurking beneath the sands of Giza, and scientists have no idea what it is. Archaeologists just found a hidden structure near the Great Pyramid using advanced ground scanning technology. What's inside? Nobody knows, but excavations are already underway. The Great Pyramid of Giza is one of the most famous monuments on Earth, but it doesn't stand alone. It's surrounded by an ancient necropolis, a massive royal graveyard filled with tombs and monuments. They belong to pharaohs, nobles, and other high-ranking officials. Most of these tombs are above the ground. They're called mastabas, rectangular, flat-roofed tombs built from limestone or mud brick, and they've been studied for decades. But from old movies, we know that these weren't simple graves. They have deep vertical shafts leading to underground burial chambers, where the past was sealed away for eternity. And recently, archaeologists found one curious empty space in the cemetery, a completely unexplored patch of ground. No mastabas, no visible ruins, nada. For years they ignored it, but between 2021 and 2023, they decided to investigate. They didn't dig though. Instead, they used a technology that kind of acts like X-rays for the ground. These radars let scientists see the secrets hidden there. And there was something hidden beneath the sand, something deliberately buried and forgotten. A two-part underground structure. One part was shallow and L-shaped. It's about 33 feet long and buried just 6.5 feet deep. But below that, a deeper, more mysterious anomaly, a structure completely different from anything else in the area. They called it a highly resistive anomaly, which means it's dense and solid, likely made of stone, sand, or even metal. And still, no one has a clue what's inside it. Now, it's clear that humans made the L shape. It wasn't formed by nature. And the shallower structure might have been an entrance to whatever is hidden below. But they only have some theories about what might be hidden there. It's also filled with sand and gravel. It was probably deliberately backfilled after its construction, perhaps to preserve this. Why? Well, we don't know yet. The archaeological team will need to excavate to understand what exactly this thing was and why it was built. The first guess is a lost burial chamber. Many tombs in Giza have underground burial sites, but most have clear surface markers. This one, for some reason, has nothing, but it could be one of them. The second guess is an ancient offering chapel. Egyptologists know that some chapels were built in this shape, but usually they were above ground, not buried like this. And finally, it might be something we've never seen before. If this turns out to be a new type of structure, it could rewrite what we know about the burials of pharaohs. The only way to know for sure is to dig it up, and that's exactly what's happening right now. Excavations are already underway. Archaeologists are racing against time to uncover the truth. But there's a real danger there too. Giza's fragile ancient structures need to be handled carefully. Otherwise, they could be damaged beyond repair. So all we can do is wait for the truth. Now, these tombs always held fascinating mysteries. Unfortunately, we'll never learn tons of these mysteries because of some relentless tomb robbers. Egyptian tombs were built to guard the bodies for eternity. But that absolutely didn't stop people from breaking in and stealing everything valuable inside. They've been bothering these ancient sites for thousands of years, starting way back in pharaohs' times. Many of the most famous tombs, including those in Giza, Saqqara, and the Valley of the Kings, were looted. It was a common practice in ancient Egypt. And they were serious about this whole thing. They dug secret tunnels to bypass traps and walls, bribed or threatened tomb workers to get inside knowledge, cracked open sarcophagi to grab gold, jewelry, and artifacts. And by the time modern archaeologists got to most of these tombs, they had already been picked clean. The reigning pharaohs got tired of this infuriating nonsense. The Valley of the Kings, the famous burial ground of Egyptian royalty, was supposed to be the ultimate safe zone. Tombs were built deep underground, hidden in the desert. Passages were sealed with giant stone blocks. False doors and traps were added to confuse thieves. Even curses were written on the walls, warnings of horrible endings for anyone who dared to disturb the tomb, which is exactly where we got all those horror stories about mummies from. Spoiler alert, none of it worked. Most tombs in the Valley of the Kings were fully robbed within 100 years of being sealed. Even King Tutankhamun's tomb, one of the most famous in history, was broken into twice in ancient times. Some of them decided to try and fight back. The New Kingdom rulers built hidden unmarked tombs in a way that should have prevented the looters from finding them, but didn't work. Some pharaohs, like Ramses II, were moved in secret to prevent their bodies from being stolen. Nope, didn't matter. The grave robbers always won. That's because tomb raiders weren't just random thieves. They were skilled, organized, and well-connected. They knew exactly where to look. Many were the ones who had built these sites in the first place, and they knew where the entrances were. If they couldn't smash through the doors, they'd dig through the walls, floors, and even ceilings to break inside. They also worked fast, often within a few years after the tombs were sealed, before anyone forgot where the valuable stuff was. The Khufu's pyramid, the one that's next to this newly discovered structure, was looted long before modern times. The one thing left inside when explorers got there? An empty granite box where the sarcophagus used to be. Unfortunately, it's not just about gold. History itself gets stolen during these raids. Ancient Egyptians wrote detailed records of what exactly and where they buried. So when archaeologists compare these lists to what's found, they can see what's missing, which is often everything valuable. Most artifacts don't end up in museums. They just disappear into private collections, where they can never be studied again. Which is, of course, completely unfair. In fact, a few countries have had enough and started passing laws to take historical artifacts back from private collectors. In Italy, if you own an ancient Roman artifact, you must prove you got it legally. China is actively hunting down stolen artifacts, and they must find ways to retrieve it back from the Western collectors. In Egypt, they passed new laws making it illegal for private citizens to own any ancient Egyptian artifacts at all. Other countries, like the US, the UK, Germany, or Switzerland, are completely fine with rich guys owning their history. The British Museum is built on looted things. European empires invaded half the planet and took whatever they wanted back home. Their museums are often full of such stolen artifacts, and unfortunately, they refuse to give most of them back. For example, the Rosetta Stone. It was taken from Egypt by Napoleon's army, then stolen again by the British after they beat the French. Egypt has been demanding to return for years, but they still can't get it back. Or the Parthenon marbles. These magnificent massive Greek structures were taken from the Parthenon in Athens by a British lord in the 19th century. Greece has been begging for them back ever since, but the UK doesn't feel like it. Not to mention tons of Mesoamerican artifacts scattered in various museums across the world. European explorers raided Mayan and Aztec temples, took statues, jewelry, and sacred objects, and now Mexico is fighting to get them back. Well, wouldn't it be surprising even if this mysterious underground chamber has somehow been looted already? But if it's a newly found place, could it be one of the few that escaped the hands of grave robbers? Could there still be ancient artifacts, untouched for 4,500 years? We can only hope that those guys didn't get there first.
It's like archaeology woke up recently and decided to spice up the news with its history-changing discoveries. From unearthing dinosaur fossils in peaceful Iowa to translating bad news from ancient Babylonian texts, history is revealing its secrets like never before. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, it froze the town in time. Some of the most famous discoveries were heartbreaking, like a mother wearing a golden bracelet, holding her child, or two sisters hugging in fear. At least that's what scientists thought. In 2024, advanced DNA tests shattered these long-held beliefs. The mother from the House of the Golden Bracelet was actually a man wearing a fancy 30-carat bracelet, and the child wasn't even related to him. As for the two sisters, DNA revealed one was actually a man, while the other remains a mystery. Some speculate they were lovers, but the truth is still buried in time. Speaking of rewriting history, another shocking revelation comes from ancient Babylon. Recently, archaeologists translated 4,000-year-old texts that turned out to be heralds of terrible news. These specific texts that were translated are believed to be from Sippar, a city near the Euphrates River in modern Iraq. They talked about lunar eclipses, which is when the Earth's shadow blocks the moon, and for ancient Babylonians, these were warnings. Eclipses could mean everything from floods and famines to chaos in the kingdom. But here's the interesting twist. Babylonians also came up with clever ways to cancel these bad omens, like calling in priests to perform rituals, or consulting oracles for advice. These ancient astrologers took their job seriously since it wasn't just about stargazing. It was about keeping the kingdom safe. Augustus was the first Roman emperor, so we can say he was a big deal. Archaeologists have already found ruins of the villas where he partied, but now they think they've found his final resting place. In a place near Naples, they've found an old structure buried under a villa. They found the equivalent of a modern heating system, something that was probably used to draw warm baths. They also found shelves filled with ancient jars, suggesting the site later became a temple. They're still not sure this was Augustus's last home, but if confirmed, this would be a big deal for world history. While ancient Rome is surprising us, the famous Nazca lines in Peru are also revealing hidden details. These massive geoglyphs, created thousands of years ago, have only been partially studied until now. Scientists trained artificial intelligence to help them scan 243 miles of terrain. With AI's help, they identified over 300 new motifs, including llamas, stick figure people, and strange heads. The algorithm, originally developed to decode charred scrolls from Mount Vesuvius, has doubled the number of known glyphs. The past is getting a serious digital upgrade. Meanwhile, in Bulgaria, archaeologists made a surprising discovery in a place few would expect: a sewer. In 2024, researchers unearthed a nearly intact 6.8-foot-tall marble statue of Hermes, the Greek god of travelers and trade, hidden beneath layers of soil. Experts believe it was placed there for safekeeping after an earthquake in 383 CE damaged the city's infrastructure. At that time, paganism was declining and Christianity was rising as the Roman Empire's official religion. Many pagan idols were being destroyed, but it seems some locals secretly preserved their deities by hiding them underground. Searching the bottom of the River Thames is probably worse than looking under your bed. The riverbed collects all kinds of discarded treasures, including a legendary typeface. In the early 1900s, two men created the Dove's typeface for printing books, but after a bitter falling out, one of them threw every single metal letter into the river. A century later, in 2014, a designer trying to revive the typeface began searching for the lost letters. In just 20 minutes, he started finding them. With the help of divers, more were uncovered, and today, some of the lost letters are on display in a museum. Not much goes on in Iowa, which is why finding a huge 13,000-year-old mastodon skeleton made headlines. In 2022, a researcher received a photo of a massive femur believed to belong to a prehistoric animal. It took 2 years to secure funding for excavation, but in 2024, archaeologists finally dug in. After 12 days of work, they uncovered a well-preserved mastodon skull, the first ever found in a Midwestern state. This discovery would make Indiana Jones jealous, especially since it happened in Petra, the ancient Jordanian city featured in one of the movies. Archaeologists uncovered a 2,000-year-old chamber beneath Petra's treasury, containing at least 12 skeletons, along with iron and bronze artifacts. The chamber, built by the Nabateans, sheds new light on their afterlife practices, which remain largely mysterious. One of the most intriguing finds was a ceramic chalice clutched by one of the skeletons. Back in Peru, archaeologists made a groundbreaking discovery that turned Peruvian history upside down: a female ruler. At the 1,600-year-old site of Pañamarca, scientists uncovered a throne room decorated with colorful murals. These murals depict women spinning and weaving, men carrying a crown, and even a crowned woman speaking to a birdman. The discovery suggests that Moche women weren't just spiritual leaders, but rather had real political power too. Tiny houses are mainly a modern thing, but archaeologists think they found one in ancient Pompeii. Unlike traditional Roman homes, which had grand atriums for entertaining guests, this house had none. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in artistry. Inside, scientists found a painted altar decorated with birds of prey, sparrows, snakes, and plants. The altar held ceremonial items like a lamp and an incense burner, still holding traces of fragrant herbs. In 2021, researchers scanning the Baltic Sea found a massive stone wall hidden beneath the waves. The Blinker Wall, stretching over 1.5 miles, could be Europe's oldest man-made structure. Sitting 68 feet below the surface, it's built from around 1,400 small stones placed between 300 giant boulders, some weighing up to 142 tons. Dating back over 10,000 years, the Blinker Wall predates Stonehenge and France's Karnak stones, meaning it was likely built when the area was dry land. Scientists believe it may have been a reindeer hunting tool, guiding animals into a lake where hunters could strike. Oh, and then there's the granite slab that was found in Egypt's Abydos area. At first, it was thought to belong to two important people from ancient Egypt, but a recent discovery showed it was actually part of the sarcophagus of Pharaoh Ramses II, one of the most famous Egyptian rulers. A researcher found a special engraving on the slab that had Ramses II's name on it. Ramses ruled Egypt a long time ago, and after he died, his tomb was looted, so his body and belongings were moved around a few times. This new discovery shows that after Ramses' tomb was robbed, some of his things were used again. The finding also teaches us that ancient Egyptian tombs were often looted, and the things in them were reused. Recently, something unexpected happened during a dig in Norton Disney, back in England. While searching for ancient coins and brooches, a volunteer from the Norton Disney History and Archaeology group stumbled upon a mysterious Roman dodecahedron. This small hollow object, made of copper alloy with 12 pentagonal sides, was buried for 1,700 years, but was surprisingly well preserved. Though over 30 of these strange objects have been found in the UK, no one knows for sure what they were used for. Some think they might have been measuring tools or calendars, while others believe they were used for rituals. The Norton Disney Group thinks these dodecahedra were likely symbols for religious ceremonies, as many show no signs of wear from daily use. Egyptologists have been digging around every inch of the Great Pyramid for ages. Yet somehow, they overlooked this stunning pink granite bathtub buried a few miles next to it. And here's the deal. This mysterious oval tube lying next to the Khufu pyramid for years may provide evidence that the Egyptians built the pyramids not only for monumental purposes, but also to generate electricity, experimenting with it long before Alessandro Volta and Thomas Edison. The Giza Plateau is famous for its three pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. But there are also two smaller foundations next to them, the unfinished North Pyramid of Zayet El Aryan and the Layer Pyramid. Some researchers say these buildings were never finished, while others think they were destroyed for more mysterious reasons. One of these reasons might have to do with the original usage of the Giza pyramids, the idea that they were used as an electricity generator. To connect these dots, we need to go back to the beginning of the 20th century. That's when an Italian architect and Egyptologist named Alessandro Barsanti decided to examine the Zayet El Aryan pyramid. Near the site, he noticed something unusual: scattered granite fragments. To a casual passerby, these might have seemed insignificant, but Barsanti recognized the signs. You see, ancient Egyptians often used sites to prepare stones before transporting them to their final destinations. The fact that there was granite on the ground intrigued him. Granite was a more expensive material than the limestone typically used for pyramids, which suggested that it might have been intended for an important and possibly hidden structure. At a depth of 68 feet, they encountered a huge pink granite block. He kept going with the excavations, and they revealed ancient inscriptions carved into the stones. They sent the drawing to experts, but no one could decipher what they meant. Were they instruction sets to something? That's when Barsanti made his biggest discovery. He found an oval-shaped vat carved from pink granite and polished to a mirror-like finish. The thing is, the vat had been carefully sealed. When they opened it, they found a thin black residue along the walls. I'm thinking something in the lines of a black oily substance. This discovery raised many questions for him. It didn't make sense to him that ancient Egyptians would go above and beyond to seal and protect this strange vat. By 1911, Barsanti had to abandon his effort to figure out what was the deal with that mysterious pit. But his findings intrigued researchers all over the world, and they've got their own opinions about it. One of these modern theories suggests that the other pyramids could have been used as a part of a bigger whole. It suggests that the Khufu pyramid was actually used as a water pump designed to irrigate the desert area. Apparently, the pyramid's internal chambers would function as a hydraulic system. In the 1990s, an engineer took this theory seriously and studied the pyramid's subterranean chamber. Surprisingly, he found actual signs of water damage. Apparently, the pyramid generated powerful compression waves, aka pulses, that could create electricity. This raised an important question. Could the ancient Egyptians have used the pyramids as a generator in order to produce electricity? On paper, that was proven to be possible, but hey, agreeing on the original use of the pyramids is probably one of the most difficult things in the world. So, we're still not 100% sure about this. Apart from that, Egypt is a playground for important discoveries regarding humanity's past. I mean, scientists have just discovered what looks like a cosmic command center, similar to that room from the Doctor Strange movies. They discovered an L-shaped astronomical observatory, measuring around 9,000 square feet, dating back to the 6th century BCE. Definitely the first and largest of its kind from that era. The mud brick structure housed tools used for calculating dates related to ancient Egyptian rites, royal coronations, and agricultural plans. This observatory is located in the archaeological site known as the Temple of Phuto, just 50 miles east of Alexandria. It's pretty impressive. The structure was designed so that you'd get inside the room through an east-facing entrance. This way, you'd get to see the sunrise. Once inside, you'd find a pretty huge shadow clock, used to tell time by tracking the movement of shadows inside the room. This variant of a sundial clock was nearly 16 feet long. That was quite an exciting discovery. Another interesting one was that scientists and Egyptologists have discovered the first ever pregnant mummy. Now, even if we know quite a lot about mummification processes, we keep making discoveries that open new doors into the lives of ancient Egyptians. It took so long for someone to find out this mummy was expecting at the time she was embalmed because she was placed in a male's coffin. More specifically, a male priest. Historians say that during the 19th century, a lot of traders mixed coffins up in order to sell them. Yes, that means they opened them and switched mummies to please their buyers. It was a complete surprise because they were hoping to study more about ancient health issues when they opened this coffin up. But they had another special research on their hands: prenatal practices in ancient Egypt. This mummified woman who lived about 2,000 years ago was from 20 to 30 years old when she passed away. She was found in Thebes, and her remains were incredibly well preserved. You see, mummification recipes varied across Egypt. In this woman's case, researchers could tell she was a member of the high society since she was buried with special amulets. But since mummification methodologies differed so much between cities and time periods, they still have to dig further to understand why she was embalmed along with her baby. Speaking of mummies, scientists were digging up a final resting place in Saqqara, also in Egypt, and they unearthed two embalming workshops. One was for humans and the other for sacred animals. Apparently, the workshops date back to about 2,400 years ago. They were equipped with stone beds, clay pots, and ritual vessels. Everything you needed to mummify. But that's not all. Archaeologists also stumbled upon cheese stored in jars behind tombs that were over 3,000 years old. Yep, cheese. This shows that the ancient Egyptians were pretty savvy when it came to preserving food, too. They knew how to store stuff for the long haul, not just the mummies. It really shows how they applied their preservation skills to both food and bodies, giving us a glimpse into their impressive technological know-how. Scientists have also found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies, and to their surprise, it was completely covered in gold. You see, Egyptian mummies covered in gold are already a rare thing, but they weren't expecting it to be the oldest one ever found. The mummy was quite well preserved, and they could identify that it was the remains of a wealthy man called hekashepes. Many symbols show that he was important and wealthy, like the band he wore on his head and the bracelet on his chest. He was also dressed in a tunic wrapped with a belt, which was a way to preserve the good appearance of a person after they passed away. To reveal it, they had to open the final resting place with mortar. Basically, it was like they were opening a time machine, just as the ancient Egyptians did 4,300 years ago. If you think about it, it's almost like entering a time capsule. Enough about mummies. Scientists also found something very exciting hovering above the pyramids. They had to use a fancy top-notch radar known as LARID, aka Low Altitude Long Range Ionospheric Radar, which can see these invisible waves far away into the sky. LARID helped them discover giant plasma bubbles floating in the air above the pyramids. These bubbles are called plasma bubbles, and they wreak havoc on modern technologies. I mean, they can disrupt GPS and phone signals for hundreds of kilometers in diameter from where they're located. These bubbles are massive, sometimes as big as cities, and they're caused by the sudden depletion of charged particles in the ionosphere. So, instead of spreading out evenly throughout the ionosphere, they stick together in this wave-like form. This was a pretty important discovery because it can help scientists understand how to prevent these waves from messing with our technology.
In November 1922, a boy walked through the desert mountains of Egypt and discovered some ancient steps carved into the rock. Subsequently, this find became one of the world's largest and most significant archaeological discoveries. This step was part of Tutankhamun's untouched tomb. Archaeologists found about 5,000 ancient objects, including jewelry, fabrics, painted vases, and funeral masks. You've probably seen one of them. It has become one of the most recognizable attributes of ancient Egypt. More than 100 years have passed since then, and now humanity has finally become close to another large-scale discovery, the tomb of Cleopatra. This queen was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, who sat on the throne from 51 to 30 BCE. There are many ancient records about Cleopatra, her reign, and her unusual personality, but until now, no one has discovered the secrets about her passing away in the burial place. So, one archaeologist, Dr. Kathleen Martinez, has been studying ancient records and temples around Alexandria for decades, and concluded that the tomb of the queen should be located under the ancient city of Taposiris Magna, founded in 280 BCE. It was a big city on the northern coast of Egypt, where tens of thousands of people were engaged in trade and industry, and it seems that Dr. Martinez's guesses turned out to be correct. She and a group of archaeologists have discovered a secret underground tunnel near Alexandria, with a length of about 0.8 miles. It was cut into the rock under Taposiris Magna's temple. During further excavations, they found many things that indicate Cleopatra's tomb lies in the tunnel's depths. It's also possible that she is buried there together with the Roman commander, Mark Antony. According to ancient records, Cleopatra and Mark Antony loved each other and together opposed the Roman Senate, which declared Antony a traitor. The fact that natural disasters have occurred on the territory of Taposiris Magna for thousands of years can complicate the excavations. Earthquakes and floods destroyed the city and possibly flooded its underground tunnels. But archaeologists hope the ancient tomb remains untouched, and that it hides many treasures and records about the royal life of ancient Egypt during the reign of the last dynasty. There's a chance that excavations will go underwater and in the mud. This will require much time and funding, but archaeologists are sure it's worth it. Anyway, it's too early to say that Cleopatra is really buried there, but scientists have found many things in the tunnel that confirm this, including clay pots, dozens of coins with the image of Cleopatra and Alexander the Great, as well as a bust with the image of the Egyptian queen. Cleopatra is still one of the most popular personalities in Egypt, on an equal footing with Ramesses III and Tutankhamun. She inspired many films, paintings, and books, but what made her so popular? She became famous for her inconsistency. She was a beautiful, intelligent ruler who pulled Egypt out of the crisis and made it a prosperous power. Medieval Arabic texts say she knew chemistry, mathematics, and philosophy, and may have written several scientific books. She knew several languages and had excellent diplomatic skills. At the same time, there are many legends that she was a femme fatale who drove many men crazy. However, there's no evidence that her beauty was incomparable. The image of a stunning model was created by Hollywood when it made several films where famous actresses performed the role of Cleopatra. And the Roman Emperor Octavian, the adopted son of Julius Caesar, specially created the image of Cleopatra as an insidious seductress because he was her enemy. Even though she was born in Egypt, Cleopatra wasn't an Egyptian. Her ancestors were Greeks, among whom was one of the generals of Alexander the Great. However, the people of Egypt loved her. She learned the language and was very sensitive to the traditions of this country. She knew the history, mentality, and customs of ancient Egypt well. She raised the level of its economy and strengthened its status as a world power. Much of this was made possible thanks to her cunning and impressiveness. She loved theatrical performances and lavish celebrations. She knew how to surprise people and put on a show. But behind the exterior image of a luxury lover was an intelligent and calculating ruler. Ancient Egypt was a rich, luxurious country, and Cleopatra did everything to increase its wealth and strengthen its position in the international arena. For example, she was once in conflict with her brother Ptolemy XIII. The queen knew that she wouldn't be able to resist him, so she decided to attract Julius Caesar to their side. The Roman emperor arrived in Alexandria, where Cleopatra wanted to meet him, but Ptolemy knew about her plans and was about to prevent her from coming to Caesar. Then, instead of a rich and noisy arrival, Cleopatra decided to make her visit inconspicuous. She wrapped herself in a carpet or linen bag the emperor's servants carried into Caesar's private chambers. Cleopatra emerged from the carpet and impressed the Roman emperor with her beauty and determination. As a result, they fell in love with each other and became close allies. After some time, she impressed another influential Roman for diplomatic purposes. She arrived to meet Mark Antony on a golden barge with purple sails and silver oars. Cleopatra was dressed in the image of Aphrodite and sat under a magnificent canopy. Her servants dressed like cupids and were blowing her fan and burning incense. But Cleopatra created such a show for a reason. She knew that Antony revered Greek mythology and considered himself the embodiment of Dionysus. As a result, he was so impressed with this woman that he ended up marrying her. Cleopatra defended her crown, strengthened her alliance with Rome, and bore Antony 3 children. In Egypt, they threw big parties and enjoyed wealth with power. However, the relationship of a high-ranking official with the Egyptian queen caused a scandal in Rome. Octavian was Antony's primary opponent in the struggle for power, so he exploited the situation to darken the competitor's reputation. He used propaganda to make Cleopatra an insidious seductress in the eyes of Roman citizens. He accused Antony of succumbing to her charms. The Roman Senate supported Octavian and declared Cleopatra an enemy. In 33 BCE, this conflict reached a high point when Antony's navy clashed with Octavian's fleet. The latter won and forced his enemy to flee to Egypt with Cleopatra. According to some records, they took refuge near Alexandria. Pursued by the Romans, they hid in one of Cleopatra's palaces and met their end. Some legends say that Cleopatra was an expert in poisons. She provoked a venomous snake, a viper or an Egyptian cobra, to bite her. Also, according to another legend, she pricked herself with a poisonous needle. There's a theory that Cleopatra always carried an ampule with poison inside her hairbrush. And when she was cornered, she soaked the needle with this poison and pricked herself. None of this can be said for sure. Scientists are still trying to find out the truth. Perhaps when they reach Cleopatra's tomb, the world will get more answers about her tragic fate. She is considered the last ruler of Egypt. After her passing, Octavian plundered her palaces and temples and returned to Rome, where he became the main emperor. He successfully ruled the country and expanded its borders. His reign ended when he turned 75. World history would have looked different if Cleopatra and Mark Antony hadn't lost that naval battle. By the way, did you know that more time has passed between Cleopatra's reign and Neil Armstrong's flight to the moon than between the reign of the Egyptian queen and the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza? Armstrong took a step on the Earth satellite in 1969, 38 years after the birth of Cleopatra. And the construction of the pyramid took place in 2560 BCE. Imagine how long the history of ancient Egypt is. Cleopatra is closer to us in time than to the pyramids.
This is not a dune set. This is a very real desert in Niger. Jado was probably built by the nomadic Sao people and is filled with ksars, which are fortified houses made of salt and clay, with giant walls and secret passages. Located deep in the desert, it was once a vital stop for trans-Saharan caravans, but is now a hotspot for smugglers and bandits. The site has been off-limits since 2002 due to its dangers. The origin of the ksars remain a mystery. No archaeological studies have been conducted, leaving many questions unanswered. Even today, shifting sands reveal and conceal parts of these ancient ruins, fueling local speculation about what might still be hidden beneath the desert. Speaking of connective tunnels, scientists were blown away by the discovery of lava tubes in Saudi Arabia. These underground passages form when molten lava cools down. Researchers believe that ancient nomadic groups may have utilized these tunnels to survive the super harsh desert climates. While excavating the tunnels, archaeologists uncovered artifacts, rock art, and skeletal remains. The art and animal bones show that the people who used the tunnels were probably sheep and goat herders. They're still piecing together whether these groups lived in the tunnels for extended periods or just used them as temporary shelters. The Great Pyramid of Giza has been standing for thousands of years, but it's still hiding secrets. Using special scanning technology, scientists found two hidden structures under an ancient burial ground. The first is a shallow L-shaped structure, and below it is a much larger space that could be a final resting place or a chamber. The smaller structure was filled with sand on purpose, while the deeper one might be an empty chamber. Experts believe the two are connected, possibly as an entrance leading to a secret chamber. This is big news because it might give us some more insight into who built the pyramids and why. The world is full of ancient writing, but some messages refuse to give up their secrets, like the mystery of the Bashplemi tablet. This unusual stone, pulled from a lake in Georgia, is covered in symbols no one can read. Even with modern technology, experts are completely stumped. The tablet is about the size of a book, with 60 symbols carefully carved into its surface, but 39 of them don't match any known language. Some resemble scripts from ancient civilizations in the Middle East, India, and Egypt, but none are an exact match. To make things even trickier, part of the tablet is broken off, meaning a piece of the puzzle is missing forever. To rule out a hoax, scientists studied the tablet closely. They confirmed it's made of vesicular basalt, an extremely tough local rock. Whoever carved these symbols must have been really skilled. Based on similar archaeological finds, experts believe the tablet could date back thousands of years, possibly to the late Bronze or early Iron Age. Some symbols repeat, which could mean they're numbers. Maybe it's an inventory list, a record of battles, or even an offering to the deities. Until someone cracks the code, the Bashplemi tablet remains an unsolved mystery from the depths of history. Experts are still stumped with what this Minoan disc might mean. The Phaistos disc is one of the most mysterious finds from the Minoan civilization. This 6-inch clay object, discovered in 1908, has strange spiral markings that no one has fully decoded yet. The disc has 241 symbols on both sides, showing everything from people and animals to tools and plants. Experts have come up with many theories about what the symbols mean. Some think it's an early form of Greek. Others suggest it's a prayer or a hymn. and some even believe it could be a letter from a king in Anatolia to a Greek ruler. Let's see who will be the first to figure this out. It's always a fun day at an archaeologist's office when they find something as big as a 2,000-year-old marble head. A French archaeologist mission went digging inside an old medieval house near Alexandria in Egypt and found a statue's head depicting an old, possibly ill man. This statue dates from the last Egyptian dynasty before it became part of the Roman Empire, and the site where it was found is associated with the likes of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. For archaeologists, even the smallest finds at this site means a lot. You've heard of Lucy, right? The Australopithecus that was an early ancestor for us humans. Well, scientists found some of her species' footprints somewhere in Tanzania. The so-called Laetoli footprints are over 3 million years old. The trail stretched 88 feet and has about 70 footprints, left behind when a bunch of early humans walked across some wet volcanic ash. What's cool is that these early humans were already walking on 2 feet, like us, not all hunched over like apes. The close spacing of the prints shows they probably had short legs and a shorter stride than we do today. In an ancient Egyptian temple, archaeologists uncovered a shrine unlike any other, a place dedicated to falcons and 2 mysterious deities. One deity had a falcon's head, while the other wore a crown with a sun disk and cow horns. But the most baffling discovery was an inscription that read, "It is improper to boil a head in here." At the heart of the shrine, there are 15 headless falcons carefully arranged on a pedestal, likely as offerings to the falcon-headed deity. One theory suggests the birds were boiled first, perhaps to pluck their feathers, before being placed in the shrine, following the strange rule carved into stone. Archaeologists also found a 13-inch iron harpoon nearby. Its true purpose remains unknown, although the shrine also held remains of fish, mammals, and bird eggs, suggesting that the rituals may have included feasting. And speaking of ancient Egypt, meet Hathor. Scientists named her after the ancient Egyptian deity of motherhood, music, and singing. This wooden statue, housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, was thought to be just a beautiful artifact, until a surprising secret was uncovered. Using an X-ray machine, experts found a mechanical operating system inside it, with pulleys and axles connecting her shoulder to her left leg. When activated, the system made her hand raise and lower, an engineering marvel from over 3,000 years ago. The statue was created during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, around 1800 BCE, and is often compared to 19th century automata due to its advanced design. It's believed the statue was used in religious ceremonies, symbolizing Hathor's role in dance and music. An unexpected discovery happened in northern Kuwait, where a Kuwaiti-Polish team uncovered a mysterious 7,500-year-old statue. The statue features an elongated skull, no mouth, narrow eyes, and a flattened nose. This feature is thought to be an Ophidian figurine, named after the Greek word for snake, and it was likely made by the Ubaid culture, a civilization known for their pottery skills. While no one knows exactly what role this weird statue played, it might have been linked to rituals or symbolic practices. Some scientists think these figurines, found in homes or final resting places, were tied to important cultural beliefs. We couldn't mention unresolved mysteries of this world without speaking about these elongated skulls. In the deserts of Peru, researchers uncovered 5 ancient skeletons, 2 with unnaturally elongated skulls. While head shaping was common in many cultures, these skulls defy explanation. Local legends tell tales of the so-called Gentiles, a mysterious race banished underground by the powerful deities. Some say this is what the skulls represent. Others think this is some type of genetic anomaly, which was confirmed after finding an infant skull, too large to be artificially shaped.
When you hear the word mummy, you might get a chill down your spine. That's because most of us associate this word with those creepy characters we've seen in some scary movies. But in reality, mummies have helped us understand a lot about ancient civilizations, their rulers, and about how people used to deal with losing their loved ones. The people most famous worldwide for their mummies are the ancient Egyptians. They believed that some sort of existence after passing away was possible, if certain conditions were met. That's why they insisted on preserving the human body through the process of mummification and placing the mummy in a furnished tomb, kind of like giving it a fully functioning apartment of its own. Why did they believe in this? Well, because they were deeply connected to their natural environment for the most part. They saw the natural cycles around them, like how the sun rose every day, followed by the moon, or how new life was always sprouting from plants, even after they had wilted away. They also believed that the powerful spirit Osiris, who represented the cycle of passing away and resurrection, played a role in this process. To prepare for the afterlife, the ancient Egyptians followed certain rituals, like mummification, which involved using materials like honey, resins, and incense to preserve the body. There's no other mummy more popular than that of King Tut. He was a young pharaoh who ruled over 3,000 years ago in Egypt. The problem with discovering ancient royal tombs is that most of such burial sites were previously robbed. People knew ancient rulers had been left with many valuable belongings, so those locations became vulnerable to thieves. When King Tut's tomb was opened in 1922, people were excited because it had not been robbed, like many other previously discovered royal tombs. That's how well hidden it was. Inside, his mummy was encapsulated in a total of 3 coffins, including one made of gold. The objects found in his tomb showed us what ancient Egypt was like, and studying his mummy also helped us learn about the culture and practices popular at the time when he passed away. We also learned about his family by looking at his DNA. Scientists were able to discover that he had had a disease called malaria and a problem with his foot that might have made it hard for him to walk. Ramses II was another pharaoh in Egypt who ruled for 68 years, which was quite a lot back in the day. He was known for his expansion campaigns and building projects. Many objects from his time as a ruler still exist today, including a large statue of him. Ramses II was about 6 feet tall and lived to be about 90 years old. After looking at his mummy, scientists concluded that he may have had a medical condition that affected his spine. Now, remember those thieves I mentioned before? They are probably the reason why Ramses II ended up in a plain coffin in a secret collection of royal mummies at Deir al-Bahari, which was rediscovered in 1881. Thankfully, archaeologists were able to identify him because his journeys had been recorded on his wrappings. The process was really tedious too. In fact, in ancient Egypt, the mummification process could take a staggering 70 days to complete. A special person would say a very specific speech while delicately handling the body and drying it out using a type of salt called natron. They also used linen and resin to make the body look more lifelike and to wrap it in cloth. The tomb was equally as important for ancient Egyptians. The walls of King Tut's tomb, for example, were adorned with intricate artwork that depicted his journey to the afterlife, from his burial procession to his passage through the underworld. The ancient Egyptians believed that everyone made this journey after passing away, and they filled their tombs with items and paintings to help the person in their spiritual travels. Additionally, the walls of the tomb were decorated with spells from a special book, which contained a collection of poems that the Egyptians believed would help people reach the afterlife. And speaking of how important this journey was, people also placed food in these ancient tombs. In King Tut's tomb, archaeologists discovered 36 jars of vintage beverages and 8 baskets of fruit, which were believed to be left there to help him in his journey to the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that traveling to the afterlife took a really long time, so they left a lot of supplies, such as food and water, to sustain their loved ones. Pharaohs also generally had numerous luxurious garments and beautiful jewelry in their tombs to ensure that they would have a fashionable journey. These items included various types of linen clothing, such as tunics, scarves, gloves, and headdresses, as well as a lot of gold jewelry with precious stones, like bracelets, buckles, pendants, necklaces, rings, and even precious depictions of insects for protection. Some were also deposited with fans made from ivory and ostrich feathers to keep them cool in the afterlife. Some ancient rulers were even placed in their forever apartments along with boats. For example, Pharaoh Khufu built the Great Pyramid at Giza as his tomb, and a large ship was found inside. King Tut, however, was buried with multiple boat paddles, but no actual boat. Instead, he had 3 chariots and numerous walking sticks made of precious materials, perhaps indicating he'd rather travel to the beyond by land, not by water. Amongst the most interesting objects found near ancient mummies are bottles of oils and perfumes. If rulers were supposed to be fashionable, why not smell nice too, right? Also, some of them had some ancient kinds of board games, most of them made out of precious materials like gold or ivory. One of those games was called Senet. It was very popular amongst the ancient Egyptians and very similar to modern-day chess. The ancient Egyptians may have the most famous mummies out there, but they weren't the first to invent the procedure. In fact, it all started in South America with an ancient civilization named the Chinchorro. As far as we know today, these people were the first to mummify their loved ones that had passed away. They did it somewhere around 2,000 years before the Egyptians started their own rituals. Sure, we can tell a lot about ancient rulers by studying these mummies, but until recently, we had no idea what they really looked like during their lifetime. Not so long ago, though, some very special mummy paintings were found by archaeologists studying ancient Egyptian objects. These mummy portraits are highly detailed paintings of individuals that were made while they were still alive. Such paintings were often painted on wood, as opposed to the classical portraits we all know about, which are painted on canvas. They are known for their realism and beauty, and have even been used by researchers to diagnose diseases by comparing them to the corresponding mummies. Some of these portraits also include depictions of jewelry, which was later found on the mummies. The recent discovery of these mummy portraits in Central Egypt is significant, as it marks the first time in over a century that such paintings have been found. Mummies appeared all around the world naturally, too. Mummification can occur without people intervening because of natural conditions, like extremely cold or hot environments, places with a lack of oxygen, or accidental exposure to chemicals that preserve the body. These conditions don't allow bacteria to grow, resulting in the body remaining more or less intact. Famous Otzi was one of these mummies. We know today he was a man who lived around 5,000 years ago in Europe. But upon his discovery in the Alps in 1991, Austrian authorities initially believed that he was a modern mountaineer because of how well preserved the body was. However, after the Iceman was removed from the glacier, it was determined that he was actually from the Copper Age.
Beneath the thick, shadowy canopy of a prehistoric rainforest, a silent hunter slides into the murky river waters. This is Titanoboa. Its size is horrifying, stretching over 40 feet long, which is about the length of a school bus, and weighing as much as a small car. It reigns as the largest snake ever known. This is around 60 million years ago. It's only been 6 million years since the dinosaurs were wiped out by an uninvited asteroid. Nature is slowly returning to life, the Paleocene epoch. Titanoboa's home is lush and sweltering. The air is very humid, like in a steam room, and the rivers are teeming with fish, perfect for a predator like this. Now that the dinosaurs are gone, Titanoboa becomes the queen of hunting. It's perfectly built for both power and stealth. A strong, sturdy spine can hold the snake's massive size while staying smooth and silent. Titanoboa glides through the water like a shadow, barely visible. It doesn't chase. It doesn't need to. Titanoboa waits beneath the river's surface, in darkness. A bunch of ancient lungfish meanders too close. With one surge, it lunges, its jaws snapping shut. The fish doesn't stand a chance. Titanoboa's grip is unrelenting. After the prey stops moving, the snake immediately consumes it whole. For millions of years, this snake ruled the rainforests. Nothing could challenge it. Not the prehistoric crocodiles, not the small mammals, not even the birds. But, as it turns out, it wasn't the only apex predator. Alongside Titanoboa, there was this entire family of snakes, a huge biological tree full of snake genomes and species. Their history spans around 100 million years, all the way to the Cretaceous period. We find their fossils all over South America, Africa, India, and Australia. That's because they evolved in the Gondwanan continents. Back then, all of this was one huge landmass, and they lived right in the heart of it. Now, this family coexisted with all the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs ruled the world back then, and the snakes couldn't be all that dangerous. They lived in the dinosaur's shadow, adapting to survive. Some of them fed on small mammals. Others waited for the dinosaur eggs to hatch. Some were super bold and went straight for baby dinosaurs. Fossils of one species showed the remains of a little titanosaur, that giant long-necked dinosaur, inside its stomach. And when the age of dinosaurs finally ended in a fiery cataclysm, it was time for these snakes to celebrate. After the asteroid disaster, the world entered a new era of heat and humidity. The warmer the climate, the easier it is for cold reptiles to thrive. Snakes, including Titanoboa, grew larger than ever, but so did the members of this family. All the snakes spread across continents, growing larger and scarier by the century. And eventually, Titanoboa stopped being the only ruler of jungles. Fast forward to about 47 million years ago. Now it's the Middle Eocene epoch, the tropical lowlands of what today is Western India. A lush, swampy place, full of rivers and pools. The earth was warmer, with turtles and crocodile-like creatures basking in the sun. And there evolved the largest and most fearsome predator of them all, Vasuki indicus. Even the name feels important. Vasuki, the serpent king of Hindu mythology, a colossal snake that's coiled around the neck of Lord Shiva, strong and loyal. And the indicus part is because the snake's fossils were discovered in India. Vasuki surpassed Titanoboa and grew to a jaw-dropping length of 50 feet, like a 4-story building. It also weighed as much as a small elephant. Unlike Titanoboa, who preferred to hunt in the rivers, Vasuki mostly hunted on land, though it still could venture into the water when needed. It prowled the marshy ground with quiet, calculated movements, blending with the dense undergrowth. Vasuki also ate crocodiles, massive turtles, and even early whales in local water pools. No one stood a chance. It had immense muscles and squeezed with unimaginable force. But the snake's jaws were much scarier. Unlike Titanoboa and today's pythons, Vasuki couldn't swallow massive prey whole. Instead, it ate them alive with its teeth, just like this. Fast and absolutely brutal, it was an apex predator of its time. And don't forget that we're not talking about one Titanoboa or one Vasuki. These snakes were part of entire populations. In the Paleocene, rivers were full of various Titanoboas. Some were younger, smaller ones, fighting for survival, while the oldest and largest ones dominated the waterways, in the same way as generations of Vasuki indicus competed with each other for thousands of years. Through the years, many siblings of this family got themselves a region to rule over. For example, alongside Vasuki, this big guy was thriving in northern Africa, in what is today's Egypt. Back then, this land was full of water and swamps. Before we learn more about other snakes, This one was considered the largest, about 36 feet long. That's still bigger than today's most powerful snakes, like the green anaconda. But then we reached the Pleistocene epoch, from about 2.5 million years ago to only 11,000 years ago. Modern humans were evolving all over the world, and now the snakes had a new problem, an even worse one than dinosaurs. While we were developing brains, in Australia, there ruled the local king of snakes. Their names also come from legends. That's how indigenous Australians called their mythological rainbow serpent the creator of the world. It's like a problem of a chicken and an egg. Was the snake named after a deity, or did the Aboriginal people create their deity after a snake? Ancient Australians coexisted with those predators for thousands of years. They warned their children how to avoid dangerous spots, passing down stories of the terrifying serpents. In their legends, the great rainbow serpent was shaping the land, rivers, and features of the world. These legends were most likely inspired by the powerful nature of those snakes. If only they knew that these animals weren't even as huge as Vasuki or Titanoboa. Though they were still dangerous. Urlungor was up to 26 feet in length. They preferred the more green and humid parts of Miocene Australia, like waterways with lush plants around the riverbanks. And there was much more potential prey. Urlungor had a thick body as wide as a human thigh. It loved to hunt in what is today the northwest Queensland. Its fossils were found in the limestone of Riverslade. It was a fascinating find. The skull was almost intact, with teeth and everything, which is crazy considering that snake skulls are very fragile and usually don't survive fossilization. Just like snakes before it, Urlungor didn't rely on venom. It was a constrictor, quick and powerful. But at least now these reptiles weren't as brutal. Their hugs quickly caused cardiac arrest in their prey. So the end came rather quickly. Also, they no longer could swallow the prey whole, and didn't have the same sharp teeth as Vasuki or Titanoboa. So both Urlungor and Wanambi had to eat very slowly, just like pythons today. Meanwhile, Wanambi was about 20 feet long. This one had a similar head, so it could only hunt marsupials, reptiles, and other little things that ventured too close. Wanambi's domain was the waterhole. It lay coiled in the shade, motionless, its body blending seamlessly with the dusty earth. If kangaroos and wallabies cautiously approached to drink, they wouldn't even notice the predator until it was too late. The Wanambi snakes lingered in Australia for millions of years. Even when the climate and ecosystem changed, it didn't bother these guys. In fact, they thrived in Australia's cooler, drier regions. Yet, even giants fall. Time moved on, the earth cooled even more, and nature began to change. Wanambi managed to last up to around 50,000 years ago, and could have lasted longer if it wasn't for humans. The same Aboriginal Australians who once feared Wanambi eventually spelled the end for the snake. All these years of being the apex predator, only for the little apes to hunt you into extinction. But that's how evolution goes. Eventually, all the giant snakes disappeared, leaving behind only their fossils and stories like this one.
During the early 1920s, the world was mesmerized by King Tut. A British archaeologist, Howard Carter, discovered the young pharaoh's tomb in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, 1922. But the public wasn't only interested in gold and jewelry. The press wrote about the curse of the pharaohs. But was it true? Was an ancient curse really the reason everyone entering the pyramids lost their lives? At the time, this was the only explanation for a series of unexplained passings. The man present at the opening of King Tut's burial chamber, George Herbert V, Earl of Carnarvon, lived only 5 more months after the discovery. He had also sponsored the dig. In comes Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. You probably know of him, the English writer behind Sherlock Holmes. He claimed that an evil elemental caused the explorer's demise. He must have been joking, right? Unfortunately, no. The newspapers continued to blame the pharaoh's curse after every Egyptologist left this world. These are the scientists who study the ancient cultures of Egypt. The archaeologist who opened King Tutankhamun's tomb passed away full 17 years after the discovery. The reason for it wasn't a secret: Hodgkin's disease. Yet again, journalists around the world wrote of a curse. This was getting ridiculous. But science must have had a rational explanation, right? Well, it did. And that explanation was common mold. Harmful fungi, Aspergillus, can survive for ages in sealed tombs. When humans inhale them, there's a high risk of infection in people who have a weakened immune system. Today, doctors believe this is what happened to the unfortunate explorer more than a century ago. Scientists now know that this type of fungi grows especially well on grain. And King Tut's tomb was full of offerings in the form of baskets full of raw grain and bread. Researchers discovered other varieties of fungi on ancient Egyptian mummies. These molds can easily cause some nasty consequences for humans. The danger of rotting organic material is real. Just look inside your fridge. Any food leftovers you have there start to go off after just 3 to 4 days. You can imagine what happens to food in a sealed chamber after thousands of years. Food is just one kind of organic material. There is also wood. If you expose it to water or even moisture in the air, it starts to deteriorate. You don't have to travel to Egypt to see the effects of this process. Any abandoned building in your neighborhood can serve as an example. When a piece of wood gets wet and has no way of drying out, there is going to be damage. From fungi to wood-boring insects, the list is long. Rotten wood presents a huge structural issue. Beams and floor panels are all made of timber, so you better not go inside a failing building. You can easily lose your footing. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The building materials since the time of the pharaohs have changed, but so have the dangers. One of the best examples is asbestos. Until the 1970s, most home insulation materials contained this substance. It was in everything, from boilers to soundproofing. This microfiber provided excellent heat insulation. But then, the United States banned asbestos in 1989. The UK did the same a decade later. The reason for it is that asbestos becomes a health hazard when it gets damaged. When humans inhale asbestos fibers, they can get seriously sick. Abandoned strictures are full of this material, and there is no one to maintain them. You see the danger now. Another material is also common in old buildings: lead. Ancient Romans used lead piping to channel spring water into their homes. They also cooked in lead vessels, which was probably not the wisest of choices. You see, lead and water don't go well together because of something called corrosion. But this problem isn't ancient. US officials banned lead piping only in 1986. That means that 7% of American households still have lead service lines. And this is not the only source of poisoning. Until the mid-1960s, builders used lead paint to coat woodwork. In abandoned buildings, this lead coating snapped a long time ago. Anyone who touches doors and windows will disturb this lead dust and inhale it. The dust particles are at least visible to an unaided eye. This is not the case for carbon monoxide. This gas has no color, so you can't see it. It has no odor, so you can't smell it. No way to detect a carbon monoxide leak at all. And how does this dangerous gas usually escape? Poor maintenance. Well, abandoned buildings have zero maintenance. 1 second, you could be exploring an old factory, and the next you could feel dizzy with and have a terrible headache. These are just some of the symptoms of CO poisoning, the less severe ones. But what is the source? All it takes is for an old boiler to finally give way after years of neglect. We've reached an important question. What is the main factor in air quality inside a room? If you are thinking the level of oxygen, try again. It turns out that oxygen levels drop by only 0.3% in 8 hours inside an airtight room. This is a room in which doors and windows are sealed with tape, so the decrease is even smaller in normal conditions. Oxygen isn't the main problem. The levels of carbon dioxide rise sharply inside a sealed room. This is the direct result of human breathing. We inhale oxygen and exhale CO2. Think of it as a waste gas. Normally it's only a tiny portion of the air we breathe, 0.04%. But in a sealed room, high levels of carbon dioxide will make you feel drowsy. And that's the last thing you need when inside a dilapidated building. Carbon dioxide will decrease your ability to think clearly. Researchers from Harvard did an interesting study in 2016. They had office workers come in 6 days in a row to complete a problem-solving test. During the week, they gradually raised the carbon dioxide levels in the mock-up office. The results of the same test kept getting worse over time. There are many factors at play, but CO2 levels definitely had an impact on the workers' problem-solving ability. The test took place inside a typical office environment, not inside a crumbling building where visitors must watch their every step. When I say visitors, I really mean trespassers, and trespassing is a criminal offense in the United States. This goes both for private and public property. If you defy the law, you can be fined up to $5,000 or even face lockup time. That should make you think twice before jumping over a fence with a no trespassing sign. But again, you might not be the only one inside. You can never know who else is in the building. Perhaps a person up to no good? It doesn't have to be a person at all. Animals can pose a threat as well. You would be startled if you saw a rat, for example. But the poor animal would be scared as well. It might bite you. The list of diseases rats carry is pretty long. But rodents' teeth can cause other forms of damage. They grow constantly, so the animal has to constantly nibble on something to stop them from overgrowing. If you ever felt peckish at 1 a.m., you know the feeling. Electric cables are high on the rodents' menu. Abandoned buildings have plenty of those. Old wiring is dangerous on its own. Structures erected before 1984 often used wires made out of aluminum. Today, copper is the standard because an aluminum wire is 55 times more likely to catch on fire than a copper one. Flipping a switch in a rundown building can cost you your life. Be on alert for telltale signs that something is wrong. Lights that flicker, sparks from sockets, and the smell of smoke. And yeah, don't count on an earth cable to protect you from electrocution. Ground cables became standard only in the 1960s.
Egyptian archaeologists made an extraordinary discovery near Cairo just recently. Drumroll, please. The most ancient and most complete mummy yet discovered in the country. Yes, they were keeping it under wraps. The 4,300-year-old mummy was found in a group of tombs close to the step pyramid of Djoser, dating back to the Egyptian Old Kingdom. It was covered in layers of gold. The team also found several other tombs, including one belonging to an ancient Egyptian official and another belonging to a secret keeper who had the power to perform special ceremonies. Another interesting tomb was that of a writer, which featured the largest statues ever found in the area. This vast burial site is also home to more than a dozen pyramids and resting grounds. Probably one of the most famous mummies in the world is that of Hatshepsut. She ruled Egypt like a boss for around 20 years, building all sorts of impressive buildings and creating new trade routes. But when archaeologist Howard Carter found her tomb in the Valley of the Kings, her sarcophagus was empty. However, Carter did find 2 coffins in another tomb, one of which belonged to Hatshepsut's wet nurse and the other to an unknown woman. In 2006, a team of specialists decided to investigate whether that mysterious lady was the queen herself. They found a molar tooth in a wooden box with Hatshepsut's name on it, and when they compared it to a gap in the mummy's mouth, it was a perfect match. Ramses II was a pretty impressive ruler, but it was his mummy that eventually made history. Now, we don't hear too much about his daddy. Okay, I'll stop. Ramses is considered to be the most powerful pharaoh in all of Egypt, as he reigned for a whopping 6 decades. He also lived to be over 90 years old. Now that's pretty amazing, considering the time he lived in. Ramses II supposedly had over 100 offspring too. Talk about a big family. When he passed away, his body was originally buried in the Valley of the Kings, but some sneaky guys tried to rob his tomb of all his treasures. Officials back in the day weren't having any of that though, so they moved his body to a secret location to keep it safe. Fast forward to the 1800s, and Ramses II's mummy was discovered along with a bunch of other rulers and important officials. But it wasn't in the best condition, so archaeologists flew it to Paris to get it, pampered. Problem was, he couldn't just be transported into another country. The only solution available was to give Ramses II his own passport. His occupation was listed as king, and the document even featured his photo. Most mummies aren't necessarily known for having the most hydrated skin. But that of an ancient woman, also known as Lady Di, proves otherwise. No, not that Lady Di. This wealthy lady from ancient times was discovered in an ornate tomb in 1971, and she looked fabulous, if we can say so about a mummy. Thanks to the special conditions in her tomb, like the moisture in the environment and the lack of oxygen, her body was almost perfectly preserved. Her skin was soft, her hair was on point, and she was still flexible. The museum that now proudly displays her mummy also shows a ton of fancy items that were buried with her, like dinnerware and musical instruments. Archaeologists investigated the mummy further and discovered that she passed away from a heart attack at around 50 years old. Even though it hasn't been around for over 2,000 years, Lady Di is still making history. The mummy of Otzi the Iceman was discovered in the Alps in 1991. Austrian authorities initially thought he was a modern mountaineer because he was so well preserved. Turns out, he was actually from the Copper Age. He was found in a mountain pass over 10,000 feet above sea level. Through studying his mummy, we've learned so much about life in Copper Age Europe. For example, we know that he was a native of Central Europe and enjoyed eating meat. He also suffered from arthritis, narrowing arteries, and intestinal problems. But he likely used acupuncture and medicinal herbs to treat these conditions. And apparently, he was pretty handy with tools. He sharpened them just days before his untimely demise. Who knows if he was expecting trouble or just getting ready for some routine work. Now, King Tut and his story is most likely the one that made all mummies famous. This pharaoh passed away at the young age of 19, more than 3,000 years ago. But his mummy is still one of the most well-known in the world. When his tomb was opened in 1922, people went wild because it was still intact, unlike many other royal tombs. It had some seriously blinged-out coffins, including one made of solid gold. Not only did Tut's tomb give us a glimpse into ancient Egyptian history, but his mummy also taught us a lot about the time he lived in. DNA analysis helped identify his parents and revealed that the pharaoh had a rare bone disorder that might have made walking a bit tough. Now, Ginger is most likely one of the coolest mummies you'll ever hear about. He's like a time traveler from 5,000 years ago who's still looking fly with his golden hair and perfectly preserved nails. Ginger was discovered in Egypt and is believed to be the earliest known mummified body. Before people even knew about mummification, they used to place bodies in shallow graves in the hot, dry sand. And since the sand absorbed all the water, bacteria couldn't reproduce and the body was preserved naturally. Now, scientists are not sure if Ginger's preservation was intentional or not, but since he was buried with some pottery vessels, it's likely that whoever buried him knew some serious preservation techniques. If you want to meet Ginger in person, he's currently chilling at the British Museum. One Dutch art collector bought a statue from Asia and ended up finding a weird discovery. The statue contained a mummy hidden inside. Unfortunately, the body was too fragile to move, so they had to leave it there. The coolest part is that this mummy is over 1,000 years old and was on display for 200 years before being encased in the statue. When scientists did a CT scan, they found out that the mummy was filled with paper scraps covered in writings. Experts think he might have done this thing called self-mummification, which is a pretty intense process involving a special diet and tea that makes your body less prone to bacteria. Only a few people could handle this ritual, and those who managed to do that were seriously respected. No other Egyptian queen has baffled scientists and historians like the stunning Nefertiti. Based on her statues, she was known for her slender neck, wide eyes, and high cheekbones. Her name translates to "the beautiful woman has come." Talk about living up to your name, huh? Even though she wasn't a pharaoh herself, Nefertiti still managed to leave a lasting impression. Written records suggest that, as a wife and queen, she held an incredibly influential role. Because of her power, she was indeed admired, but she also managed to make quite a lot of enemies throughout her life. She was also related to King Tut, but not biologically. Rather, she was his stepmother. So far, locals have yet to identify her mummy, but that may soon change. A local Egyptologist who has been busy excavating tombs in the Valley of the Kings has found two mummies that he believes could be Nefertiti and her daughter. According to specialists, we may soon finally get a definitive answer about the identity of these two mummies. And if one of them does turn out to be Nefertiti, we could be in for a real treat. DNA analysis and CT scans of the mummy could give us the most complete and accurate image of the queen that we've ever seen. It's crazy to think that we've only scratched the surface of what lies beneath modern-day Egypt. Nefertiti ruled during a time of great power and prosperity in Egypt, but unfortunately passed away in a period of social turmoil, leading to her gravesite being lost. Now, where's my mummy? A gruesome discovery took place in Egypt some years ago. You want to hear about it? 16 human hands, carefully buried in 4 eerie pits. They didn't look too much like human hands at first, since they were abnormally large, but they were. Weirdly, there were only right hands. No left hands were in sight. It turned out that it points to the practice of an ancient dark ritual. Old Egyptian art and tales talked of a ceremony where warriors would present the right hand of their adversaries as proof of victory and ask for gold in return. Egyptians believed in the afterlife, so cutting off someone's hand meant you cut off their power eternally. Guaranteeing this type of defeat was interesting to the winning party. Here, the fight was between Egyptians versus Hyksos, who lived in what was once known as Canaan. Egypt has always been the center of some history-changing findings, and some time ago, this papyrus was found. If we stretched it open, it would be just a tad bigger than the height of a skyscraper. The world's tiniest skyscraper, which is located in Wichita Falls, Texas. When humans didn't write on their notes app, they wrote on this thing, made from the medulla of a papyrus plant. Around 2,000 years ago, ancient Egyptians wrote something reminiscent of a book where they describe most of their funerary traditions and their visions of the afterlife. It's considered one of the most important texts from ancient Egypt and is still sold in bookstores to this day. This ancient manuscript was unearthed from a chamber located just south of the Pyramid of Djoser, located in Saqqara. Oh yes, Djoser is the oldest pyramid in Egypt and not the Giza pyramids like most people think. So recently, the site of Saqqara buzzed with excited archaeologists who probably found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies. They believe that this beautiful and well-preserved mummy was that of a wealthy man. He was discovered in a deep shaft, covered in layers of gold leaves. There are many symbols that show he was an important and wealthy man, like the band he wore on his head, the bracelet on his chest, and the fact that he was embalmed with a tunic, which was reserved for Egypt's finest. The most exciting part of the entire discovery was finding the resting place sealed with mortar, just as the ancient Egyptians had left it 4,300 years ago. Now this may sound weird, but back in 2008, archaeologists discovered a missing pyramid. Now it went missing because it deteriorated over the span of 4,000 years. Today, you can only see its base. It was a pretty important site back in ancient times. It is said that around the area of the pyramid, the ancients hosted a special type of ceremony where high priests would carry mummified remains of sacred bulls. Now here's a fun fact. Ancient Egyptians believed that Apis bulls were earthly incarnations of the city deity of Memphis and was connected to rites of fertility. It wasn't just any Apis bull though. They needed to be all black with a single white mark between its horns and a bunch of very specific characteristics. They were selected by the local priests and honored until they passed away. After that, they were mummified and buried in underground galleries. Meanwhile, this missing pyramid sort of disappeared around the 1800s. It was a German archaeologist who first found it in the village of Saqqara. He called it the Headless Pyramid when he first found it. But then, years after the official discovery, the desert sand came along and covered the whole thing. There were some excavations between the 19th and 20th centuries, but they weren't too systematic. That's why scientists were so thrilled when they dug an entire pyramid's base after removing the 25-foot mound of sand that was covering it. Oh, and it turns out American archaeologists are excavating a cemetery in Egypt that could contain over 1 million mummified bodies. So far, archaeologists have dug around 1,700 mummies. One of the main differences from other classic Egyptian mummies is that these people weren't kings and pharaohs. They were commoners that most likely lived about 1,500 years ago, when Egypt was controlled by the Roman and Byzantine empires. The name of the cemetery is cool though, the Way of the Water Buffalo. just in case you want to check it out on your next trip. Other than bulls and buffaloes, ancient Egyptians also liked baboons. Are you seeing a pattern here? In the beginning of the 20th century, archaeologists discovered a site filled with mummified baboons in a place called, guess what? The Valley of Monkeys. An animal wouldn't have been mummified if it wasn't considered important. Certain animals were more important than others, since they were linked to specific deities. Jackals were connected to Anubis, the ancient god of the afterlife, and cats were likened to the female deity Bastet. Baboons were a pretty big deal, since they were believed to be connected to Thoth, the deity of wisdom and advisor to Ra, one of Egypt's supreme deities. The archaeologists who studied these animals weren't too happy. They think these baboons were kept inside and were deprived of sunlight for most of their lives. They had extreme vitamin D deficiencies and they were poorly fed. Maybe Thoth got angry with these baboon keepers. Just a guess. Since there's never a boring day for archaeologists in Egypt, they also found human mummies with golden tongues. Since Egyptians were all about the afterlife, they believed that golden tongues might help a person speak once they pass to the other side. I mean, it's a long shot, but hey, why not? Some of these mummies were placed in wooden coffins with goods, such as necklaces, pottery, golden artifacts in the shape of lotus flowers and scarab beetles, and iPhones. Just kidding. A new temple was also unearthed recently in Egypt. Scientists believe it was dedicated to honor Zeus Cassios. That deity would be a cross between Zeus, the almighty Greek deity of the sky, and Mount Cassios. While digging around the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, archaeologists spotted two pink granite columns poking out of the ground, and bingo. They believe these columns represented the temple's front gate and collapsed during an earthquake many years ago. And speaking of deities, there weren't only super serious deities. Recently, scientists unearthed a golden ring in a city south of Cairo. No, Frodo, it's not magical. It was a normal gold ring, but it had the depiction of the deity of fun, officially named Bes. This deity is often described in sacred texts as a happy chubby dwarf. Today, many tattoos we get are sorta deprived of any sense and are made of aesthetic purposes only. In ancient Egypt, though, women would get tattoos as a token of protection for childbirth. That's what scientists think, at least. Around the Nile region, scientists found some mummies that had well-preserved tattoos, which is a rarity since the skin deteriorates so easily. Two of these women tattooed their lower backs, and the drawings were simple. They were mostly pictures, including that same chubby dwarf we just talked about, Bes. He also had a side hustle as the protector of women during childbirth. Now, would you believe me if I told you ancient Egyptians invented robots? No? Well, that's because that's not entirely true. Sure, they were astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers, and somehow they also squeezed an eccentric invention into that package. An automated deity some scientists called Hathor. This wooden statue had been in the Metropolitan Museum of Art for years before someone noticed its secret. With the help of an X-ray machine, specialists discovered a mechanical operating system inside it. The pulley-like axis goes from the statue's shoulder to her left leg. When the system rotates, the statue raises and lowers her hand. Hey, pick me! Pick me! I got my hand up here.
Everyone loves a good landmark. The Roman Colosseum, the ancient city of Machu Picchu, the Giza pyramids. But have you ever wondered how it once looked? Way back in the days when they were built? Or even in the time they were covered in ivy and forgotten by humanity? Buckle up, because we're heading on a time travel adventure to the world's greatest archaeological sites. Our voyage begins in South America, deep inside the Peruvian mountains. Behold, the city of Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is a monument to the ingenuity and power of the Inca civilization. During its prime, the Inca civilization stretched 2,500 miles along South America's coastline from modern-day Ecuador all the way down to Chile. And Machu Picchu was located at the heart and center of it. The historic site was constructed at around 7,000 feet above sea level, more or less around 1450 BCE. The gated city consisted of around 150 buildings made of stone. The Incas managed to build temples, houses, and even a complex aqueduct system to irrigate the entire town. And yes, they did all that without the help of wheels or any instrument made of iron. The housing model is somewhat similar to stone houses we see nowadays, with the difference that the Incas didn't use any cement to stick together the blocks of stone. Yet, they fit seamlessly on top of each other. Not only that, the Incas must have developed a rudimentary yet effective anti-earthquake technology, since, in the event of a quake, the rocks would shake without falling out of place. If Machu Picchu had been built today, it would have cost over $70 million to finish the entire thing. The purpose of the site is still a mystery to many historians. Theories suggest that it could have been built as a ceremonial site, a safety base for the Inca people, or even a retreat for royalty. What we know for a fact is that in the 16th century, 100 years after Machu Picchu was built, its population abandoned it, with tree roots taking over the majority of the site and keeping it hidden from humankind for over 4 centuries. It wasn't until the 20th century that the world was reintroduced to Machu Picchu when a Peruvian farmer led Yale University professor Hiram Bingham III to visit the site. Since then, Bingham and many other explorers dedicated their lives and research to studying the archaeological wonder of Machu Picchu. Now, for the next stop on our time-traveling vehicle, the city of Pompeii in Italy. Pompeii has crowded our collective imagination for many years. The eruption of the Mount Vesuvius volcano in 79 AD and the destruction of an entire city is hopefully not something that will happen again. But I bet you're wondering, what did Pompeii look like on its last day? It took 18 hours for Pompeii's streets, markets, houses, and forums to be buried under millions of tons of volcanic ash. Thanks to some clever scientists, we discovered that the lava and ashes that covered Pompeii on its very last day actually helped to freeze the city in time. Different from ice, the cloud of ashes did not preserve the city intact, but as the items disintegrated over 2,000 years, they left voids under the earth. Archaeologists found that if they filled these voids with plaster, the shape of the buried city would soon reveal itself. And that's exactly what happened. Of course, it was nothing like the bustling city of 12,000 people that had existed for many years before the fateful eruption. Pompeii was a vibrant and rich municipality. The site's ruins revealed that many areas of Pompeii boasted impressive houses, some with balconies, which was a sign of great wealth at the time. And, believe it or not, even some artwork survived the eruption. Archaeologists found well-preserved frescoes and murals of mythological creatures, all indicating that members of the high society lived there. Ruins show the city even had thermal baths and showers made with luxurious materials. Oh, and apparently, the people of Pompeii had amazing teeth. Yes, archaeologists could see even that tiny level of detail from the plaster molds they recovered from underground. Still in the Italian territory, we find one of the world's biggest tourist attractions, the Roman Colosseum. It was built as an amphitheater during the reign of Emperor Vespasian, around 70 AD. It wasn't until 80 AD that Vespasian's son, Emperor Titus, inaugurated the Colosseum. The monument was something to behold, with 157-foot-tall walls, over 80 entrances, and the capacity to host 87,000 people. All social classes and groups were welcome at the Colosseum, and this partly explains why it flourished for so many centuries. During the decline of the Roman Empire, around the 6th century AD, the Colosseum started being neglected and abandoned. The monument was looted, and some of its columns and stones were used to build infrastructure elsewhere. Only 1/3 of the original Colosseum still remains, and if it's big now, imagine what it once was. Greece was home to one of the world's largest empires. At the height of this empire, literally and historically speaking, more or less 2,400 years ago, the Greeks built a citadel known as the Acropolis. The Acropolis, which is composed of historical buildings, is considered to be one of the biggest landmarks of Western civilization to date. Tourists that visit the capital city of Athens today may be faced with yellowish and broken pillars of the Parthenon standing way up high in one of the city's hills. But way back when it was built, between 447 and 432 BCE, the imposing and majestic Parthenon was purely white, as the entire monument was built with gleaming white marble. The statues inside were made of gold. The Parthenon is a 23,000 square foot temple held up by 69 marble columns. The largest blocks of marble are massive, weighing around 10 tons each. And the most surprising fact is that the marble didn't come from Athens, but from a nearby site that stood 10 miles from the Acropolis, known as Mount Pentelicon. Historians intrigued by where the primary material for building the Acropolis came from found tiny and big blocks of marble all scattered around the floor of Mount Pentelicon. There was also a paved road that the Greeks had built to carry the rocks around. But perhaps the most impacting monument of all times is located at the heart of the Middle East, outside the Egyptian city of Cairo. The pyramids are considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Giza Pyramid Complex was built as a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu around 4,500 years ago. Between 20 to 30,000 people took part in the construction process. It's composed of 3 pyramids. The massive monument is made out of approximately 8,000 tons of granite and over 550,000 tons of mortar, which gives it the appearance it has today. Would you believe me if I told you that the pyramids didn't always look like this? Far from it. They were shiny white with a golden triangular tip at the top. This is because the Egyptians used over 6 million tons of limestone to cover the entire rocky, step-like structure, all so that they could gleam white under the unforgiving sunlight of Egyptian skies. The Pyramid of Khufu remained the tallest structure on Earth made by humans for over 3,800 years. It was the only 8-sided pyramid in Egypt and was believed to align with Orion's belt. It's considered to be the most aligned construction facing north. In 1979, it was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Let's head on down to the Indian city of Agra to quickly visit the Taj Mahal. You may know it as the Taj, but it can also be called by its more endearing name, a teardrop in the cheek of time. The Taj took over 22 years to build and was commissioned in 1632 by Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan as a declaration of love for his third and favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal. It was made with ivory white marble, and amazingly, due to tight conservation, it still remains very similar to what it was when it was built. I think all this talk of landmarks got me thirsty for some traveling. What about you? Tell us in the comments below if you've ever visited some of these sites, or which interesting landmarks you'd add to this video.
This just in, the world's oldest pyramid was built during the last ice age. And I'm not even talking about Egypt. I'm saying our ancestors might have spewed a 27,000-year-old pyramid in West Java. Gunung Padang is not exactly shouting pyramid. It's more of a mound with huge scattered stones tossed all over it. But local people seem to revere it, and they have for centuries. It wasn't until recently that the Indonesian authorities decided to excavate a bit deeper to see what all the fuss was about. They ended up finding the remains of a human settlement. It was rather unexpected, since the mound is pretty high up. This excavation could only prove there were humans in the area as far back as 45 BCE, which sounds reasonable. It was up to an Indonesian geologist named Donnie Hillman to prove that Gunung Padang is the world's first pyramid. He used all sorts of new technology to support his claim. Our guy used carbon dating, which digs deep into the earth and takes whole chunks of soil. He found layers and layers of constructions, like he was digging up Rome and finding ancient buildings buried in the ground. His research proved that there had been caverns and even rooms down there, which could only mean one thing: humans. As for the rocks located up in the mound, they were most likely strategically placed by the people who lived there back in the day. They needed a place to meditate, so they arranged things in a harmonious way. Their smooth surfaces wouldn't be the result of years of erosion, but the works of great sculptures, the Michelangelos of their day, let's say. If this is all for real, then human civilizations began way before we think they did. Our ancestors, the Paleolithic humans, didn't have what it took to be considered a civilization, especially not the tools and knowledge to build pyramids. They needed a lot of masonry skills, which weren't all that available during the last ice age. His peers don't share this view though. They could believe Hillman's theory if he had found evidence such as charcoal and bone fragments, but he didn't. Flint Dibble, another archaeologist, says that without concrete evidence of human activity, there's no proof of an actual pyramid. In this case, all the data proves is that the soil in the mound dates back to 27,000 years ago. He thinks the rocks on top of the mound just slipped down the hill like rocks normally do. Only a complex society would have managed to build a stepped pyramid like they claim it was. But according to Bill Farley, an American archaeologist, there's just no reason to believe there were any settlements in Indonesia during the last ice age. Now, just so you know, the oldest known ancient society with this kind of knowledge is probably 11,000 years old and used to occupy the region of modern-day Turkey. Take a look, Turkey's Göbekli Tepe. It's also not a pyramid, but it's the oldest monolithic construction made by humans. Back in the Neolithic period, a lot of people settled there, and there are proofs for it. For example, the walls there are covered in ancient drawings of clothing and wild animals. Until recently, the title of the world's oldest pyramid went to a three-sided construction known as the Djoser Pyramid in Egypt. Djoser is located just a few miles south of the Giza complex in a town called Saqqara. It made its way to popular culture more than once. In the 18th century, it became a common feature in European paintings. Young men from the cultural elite did a grand tour around the world, and Saqqara was at the top of their list. It was also featured in the video game Assassin's Creed, with a digital representation way more accurate than many historical drawings of the thing. That was kind of a big deal in ancient Egypt, to build pyramids for kings to spend their afterlives. And if you thought the Khufu pyramid was the oldest one in the world, well, Djoser was built 70 years ahead of that time. The development of new technology has allowed archaeologists to make groundbreaking discoveries, and a new, or should I say ancient pyramid in South America might win the title in dispute. It turns out that pyramids were also pretty fashionable in the Americas in the old days. Among them are the iconic pyramids of Guatemala's Tikal temple complex, the same ones that appeared in Star Wars No. 4. But to find the oldest pyramid in the Americas, one would have to travel to Peru. Deep in the Peruvian desert, archaeologists stumbled upon a sprawling ancient metropolis known as Caral. At first, researchers believed that the settlement was pretty recent, since the site was way too complex for ancient technology to handle it. As we said, Caral is a desert town, like Las Vegas, but without all the hoopla. This means no easy access to water. And for cities like these to thrive, they need a considerable irrigation system, which leads us back to complex technologies. The Peruvians surprised us all with this new discovery. This site was huge, filled with an amphitheater, houses, and religious buildings. The whole thing probably sprawled through 370 acres. And when scientists went to test their initial hypothesis using radiocarbon dating, they found that the city probably sprung around 2027 BCE. On the site, archaeologists found 6 pyramids that could possibly predate the one in Saqqara. As far as they know, both civilizations coexisted in the same time period, in opposite parts of the world. But since researchers can't pinpoint the exact age of Caral's pyramids, it's pretty hard to guess which civilization completed their pyramid first. Today, humans a bit confused. A classic example is the Japanese side of Yaonagani, which also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 football fields and the height of a 5-story building. Explorers and scientists believe that Yaonagani dates back to 10,000 years ago. For Japan's top marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, Yaonagani is the heritage of a lost civilization. Kimura has dived into exploring the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. To him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. Check out this triangular-shaped pool on the monument's surface. Kimura thinks it's actual proof of humans, because this triangle-shaped concave is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. As it happens with a lot of these cases, not all scientists are convinced the same. For many, Yaonagani is probably the result of thousands of years of erosion, and the fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe it is not really human-made. Sure, these huge basalt columns may look like the ruins of a palace, but they're most likely the result of the intense volcanic activity in the region. And speaking of natural formations that really look like a human made it, a pyramid on Mars has been a hot topic lately. Humans have been keenly trying to prove that there is life on Mars for quite some time. But some are stretching it really far, saying that little green or gray people built a pyramid on the planet to try and build their own civilization. This picture was taken over a decade ago by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the MRO, but it started to resurface recently. It shows what looks like a three-sided pyramid. Some people claim that the smooth side of the pyramid could only be the effect of otherworldly work. Then science comes along and explains that Mars is home to one of the deepest canyon systems in the whole solar system. The so-called pyramid is located in what is known as the Kandor-Chasma region. This Martian region has a bunch of similar formations that are nothing more than the result of erosion. Nothing supernatural going on there, apparently.
A Portuguese archaeologist just discovered a bunch of sunken ships filled with gold, including a Spanish galleon with 22 tons of gold and silver. This much gold today is worth about $2 billion, and this is the money from one ship alone. Archaeologist Alexandre Monteiro made this discovery almost by accident. He was studying some documents when he found some information about a ship that went missing in 1615, and he decided he wanted to find it. After many years, Alexandre found not just this specific ship, he actually discovered 8,620 shipwrecks in the waters of Portugal alone. Out of this number, 250 are gold-filled shipwrecks, a discovery that would make any Jack Sparrow shake in his boots. Most of these ships went down for boring reasons like the weather, but sometimes they were destroyed in battles, which may or may not have been super epic. They were carrying gold and other treasures from the New World to Europe, and of course, everyone wanted a share. Alexandre had been studying historical shipwrecks for 30 years now, so he has discovered many ships that went down in somewhat glorious ways. In 1816, for example, a ship of one of the richest men in Portugal sank in Australia, with an insane amount of 66,000 silver coins. This was the first ship from Portugal to ever plunge in the waters of Australia. The bad news is that these ancient sunken vessels, filled with riches and epic stories, are not so easy to reach. They're deep down in the ocean and covered by sand. You could still try, but that would be stealing part of a country's history. And you wouldn't want to be that person, would you? Naturally, Portugal was not the only country that explored the seas back then. The coast of Europe is packed with sunken ships filled with gold. In fact, there are about 1 million historical shipwrecks underwater right now, and the treasures abandoned under the sea might be worth around $60 billion. It's an insane amount of money, but let me tell you that these gold-filled sunken ships aren't really worth the hassle. There are many stories of maritime treasure discoveries that turned into insane lawsuits and even long jail time. Our first story starts in 1746, when a violent storm crashed a ship called Prince de Conti near an island in Brittany. The ship was filled with tea, ceramics, and 100 gold ingots. Of course, the owners of the ship tried to save the loot, but if it's not easy now, imagine how it was back in the 18th century. It took more than 200 years for the vessel to be found. It finally happened in 1975, when a group of French men discovered it and decided to take pretty much every valuable thing they could find. Now, I said these things were not worth the trouble for a reason. In France, if you find anything that can be historical, you must declare it to the local authorities within 48 hours. Fail to comply, and you will be committing something known as a crime. To be fair, our French friends here did declare their findings, but only the corroded cannons from the ship. And the gold? Well, they sold it. Obviously, because each gold bar is worth between $125,000 to $231,000. It took French authorities almost 50 years to retrieve the stolen gold, and they didn't retrieve all of it. Part of it was bought by an elderly couple living in Florida, and the crime is so serious they were charged for connection with money laundering, organized crime, and the trafficking of cultural goods. The poachers also sold some gold ingots to the British Museum collection. Now, let's go back to the 1850s, when a steamer called SS Central America traveled from Panama to California and back again. This was during the Californian Gold Rush, a time when 300,000 people moved to California to dig for gold. Because the travel route was not easy breezy, people needed to carry their gold around on big ships. This is where our friend SS Central America comes in. In 1857, the ship had 578 people on board and about 10 tons of gold. Very few survived, and around $100 to $150 million in gold went down with the ship. All of this explains why in 1988, a group of investors from Columbus decided to finance a research project to find this ship. The research was led by a guy named Tommy Thompson. Tommy was really crazy about the idea of finding this sunken ship filled with gold. It took him years to find the exact location of the SS Central America, especially because the ship was 7,500 feet beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, and retrieving it required a lot of fancy tech. A group of 161 investors paid for his adventure, but it goes without saying that they were not doing this out of love from their hearts. They invested $12.5 million in this project because they were expecting to earn at least 10 times more. But since life is not all sunshine and rainbows, 39 insurance companies sued the research team as soon as they retrieved the gold. Back when the ship was up and running, these companies insured the cargo of the SS Central America, and when the cargo was finally retrieved, more than 100 years later, they wanted to be compensated. They said it was not their job to retrieve it, but that doesn't mean they abandoned it. This crazy talk didn't stick, and 92% of the gold was given to the research team. The plot thickened when the investors were scammed by none other than Tommy Thompson, who fled with $4.16 million. He also had 500 gold coins, but he's not telling a soul where they are. Nonsense like this is the reason why most countries have rules to protect cultural properties. And yes, sometimes shipwrecks can be a cultural property. Obviously, there are many maritime treasure discoveries that happen without breaking any laws. The SS City of Cairo, for example, was a steamship that submerged in 1929 with 2,000 boxes of silver coins weighing 122 tons. A company called Deep Ocean Search retrieved the coins from a depth of 17,000 feet, which is 4,500 feet lower than the Titanic. 34 million pounds went to the UK Treasury, and the Deep Ocean Search also got a share. The good news here is that some of the coins can be bought by collectors, legally. Paying for a treasure is probably the closest you can get to an underwater archaeology find. I know, all I did was destroy your piracy dreams. But while raiding gold-filled shipwrecks may be a crime in most countries, or just financially impossible for us mere mortals, not all hope is lost. There is about $771 trillion worth of gold lying on the ocean floor, and it doesn't have an owner. It's like an underwater gold mine, except the gold is in the water. You know how the water of the ocean is salty? Well, the gold gets mixed with the minerals in the water, so it's not like you stumble upon a gold nugget on the beach. Each liter of ocean water has 13 billionths of a gram of gold, and it's very difficult to extract such tiny particles of gold from the water. But that doesn't mean people haven't tried, and, of course, there's been a scam here too. In the 1890s, a guy claimed he had invented a thing that would suck gold from the seawater. When he got enough money, he fled the country with the cash. If you really want to get some gold, you could try to extract it from the Earth's core, which has 1.6 quadrillion tons of gold. There's 16 times more gold in the Earth's core than what humans have mined in the whole of history. No hoax involved here, because nobody has dared to go down there yet. With archaeologists discovering gold-filled sunken ships out and about, maybe we can make our own maritime treasure discoveries, or at least save enough money to buy some silver coins.
You take off from Earth and park your spacecraft somewhere near the moon. You're now almost 240,000 miles away from your home planet. That's almost 100 widths of the United States. Now you take out a giant hammer and an enormous chisel using the robotic arms of your spaceship. You place the chisel at the Earth's North Pole and strike its head with the hammer. Earth splits open like an eggshell, and you see it, another planet. It's Theia, and it's hiding inside our planet like a yolk in an egg. You'd need to go back in time 4.5 billion years to find out how it got there. This beautiful nebula will soon become our solar system. Colored dust and various space debris are slowly coming closer toward the common center. Soon this jigsaw puzzle of debris becomes too heavy and dense. The temperature inside the giant is rising. Soon it gets so high that it triggers a nuclear chain reaction. Another second and bam! There's an explosion so powerful that the shockwaves travel far into dark space. And the blinding flash from this blast can be seen from the other side of the Milky Way galaxy. When the dust clears a little, you can see that a bright light is still shining at the very center of the explosion. This newborn star is the Sun. It weighs as much as 333,000 Earths. If the Sun was a bucket, you'd need 1.3 million Earth-sized planets to fill it. You're interested in a small object over there, 93 million miles away from the Sun. This pile of rocks and hot lava is Earth. Right now, the planet is busy forming its core, while the oceans of lava are gradually cooling down. But a few tens of so they inevitably come closer and closer to each other until they become next-door neighbors. We see that Theia is the size of Mars and as wide as the Atlantic Ocean from New York to Portugal. A collision can't be avoided. Theia is traveling toward Earth at nearly 9,000 miles per hour. That's 11 times faster than the speed of sound. If the smaller planet crashes into Earth at a particular angle, Earth will most likely be torn apart, as well as Theia itself. The collision will cause a huge blast, visible on other planets even on a bright day. Nothing will be left but some burning dust and debris. Even if Theia touches Earth only lightly, it'll still knock out a chunk of our planet the size of Australia. But the collision with Theia happens at a perfect 45-degree angle. It strikes the Earth at tremendous speed. The explosion literally vaporizes huge amounts of rock, and the shock wave sends the remaining debris into Earth's orbit. A huge crater is formed at the impact site. Soon, it gets filled with boiling lava. The remnants of Theia and the ejected fragments of Earth begin to orbit our planet. According to one version, these fragments form two moons. At first, they travel together, but one day, they get too close to each other and collide, forming one large space body. The other theory claims that all the shards start being pulled by the remnants of Theia. Sometime later, they form the moon as we now know it. At that point in the past, though, it's just red-hot rock and lava. The collision at this angle slightly tilts our planet and accelerates its rotation. It's because of Theia that we have different seasons and 24 hours in a day. Earth has lithospheric plates. These are enormous solid pieces that make up the crust of our planet. After the collision with Theia, they start to break and crack. It causes carbon, a primary component of all known life on Earth, to start moving all over our planet. So, Earth gets some kind of metabolism. After a few 100 million years, the first living creatures start to appear on our planet. Over nearly 4 billion years, simple single-celled organisms have been evolving into the life you see today. According to scientists, such a collision is a very rare event. The probability that somewhere out there, there's a planet like ours that has survived the same catastrophe is extremely small. This may be the reason why we are yet to find traces of other civilizations out there in space. Meanwhile, the remains of Theia are still here on Earth. Of course, it doesn't look like an entire planet stuck inside our own. Most of the fragments have melted and blended into the Earth's crust. If you take the top layer off our planet, you'll see two huge lava blobs the size of entire continents. They're right below Africa and the Pacific Ocean. Presumably, these are the remains of Theia. They didn't mix with Earth's mantle because of different densities. It's like mixing water and oil in a glass. The oil will always float up over the water and create an even layer on top of it. But if you raise those lava patches up to the surface, they'd be 100 times higher than Mount Everest. Other remains of Theia might be on the moon. The Apollo space missions brought back many soil samples for analysis. Scientists have concluded that the moon is very similar to Earth in structure. People could drill deep down and take samples there. Then they'd analyze the blobs from Earth. If their structure matched, it'd be 100% proof that Theia did hit Earth 4.5 billion years ago. And that's how we got the moon. But for the time being, Theia remains somewhat mysterious. Scientists are still not sure that the planet actually existed. The whole idea perfectly fits the model of the moon's creation. But in fact, this incredible collision may have never happened.
Hop on the bright side of life together with our brand new tees, hoodies, and more. Click the link to pick your choice.
Now you travel 41 light years away from Earth to the planet 55 Cancri E. It's about twice the size of Earth and 8 times heavier. You take out your giant hammer again and use it to hit the chisel. The planet cracks, and you see it's a giant diamond. The temperature on this planet is tens of times higher than that of Earth, and its soil is rich in carbon. The heat puts a lot of pressure on this carbon. Its structure changes. First, it turns into graphite. Some more pressure, and graphite turns into diamond. On Earth, diamonds form at depths below 60 miles, where the pressure is 50,000 times greater than on the surface. The temperatures there rise over 1,000 degrees, which is as hot as fire. Diamonds are ejected closer to the surface in volcanic eruptions. Still, people have to dig mines 1,500 feet deep to find these beautiful gems. The Golden Jubilee diamond is the biggest cut and faceted diamond on Earth. It weighs as much as a chocolate bar and is the size of a hamster. Its price is about $12 million. Now imagine a diamond the size of an entire planet. You decide to fly back to the solar system. Your destination is Jupiter's moon, Europa. It's as wide as the distance between Seattle and Houston, and its mass is less than 1% the mass of Earth. Its surface is enclosed in an icy crust. It's about 19 miles thick. But what if you crack this crust with your giant hammer? Wow, Europa is completely covered in water. It's freezing here, 3 times colder than at the North Pole on Earth. The water turns into ice almost instantly, but the ocean beneath the surface is still liquid. Europa interacts with Jupiter gravitationally, just like the moon with Earth. This creates tidal forces and heats Europa's core. The core melts the ice around it. The result is a huge ocean, 2 to 3 times larger than all of Earth's oceans combined. Scientists believe that water is the basis of life. It may mean that life may exist on Europa. There could be thermal springs, just like at the bottom of our oceans. The water there is probably much warmer. And even though the pressure and temperature in such places are likely to be extreme, simple bacteria may live there. Europa is almost the same age as Earth. This means there's been enough time for living organisms to appear and evolve. Who knows? Maybe some advanced civilization is already blooming under this crust of ice. They may be building big cities and dreaming of conquering space right now. But the only thing people can do at the moment is send a probe to Europa and find out if life is possible there.
You know, scientists make discoveries that change the world, but even they can face mysteries. Here are 10 things that have baffled scientists. Imagine that you constantly hear a low-frequency hum, and no one can trace its source. Roughly 4% of the world's population hears the hum. It's a geography-free sound. I mean, people all around the world hear it, so the name varies from Tao's hum to Auckland hum, depending on the region where it gets generated. The sound is just on the threshold of human hearing. People hear it less when they're outside, and it gets louder indoors, especially at night. What's even scarier is that you cannot unhear it once you've heard it. Some folks say it started in London around the time of Charles Dickens, who wrote A Christmas Carol, and the low-frequency sound actually comes from the humbug. Or not. Actually, the earliest cases were recorded in Bristol, UK, dating back to the mid-1970s. Scientists have various theories about where the hum comes from and why only some people can hear it, yet they don't have a clear answer. It could occur when ocean waves move along the ocean floor. They shake the Earth when they collide with continental shelves. Or this might be happening because of volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. Oh, and how about ultra-low frequency radio signals used to communicate with submarines or even 5G? Upsweep is another type of unidentified sound. It was discovered in 1991 in the Pacific Ocean. The sound is high enough to be recorded throughout the ocean. Scientists theorize that the sound could be related to underwater volcanic activity. Interestingly, the volume of the sound has been diminishing compared to its volume when it was first discovered, yet it still can be detected. Plus, it's seasonal. It reaches its highest volume in spring and fall. Is it related to seasonal changes? No one really knows for sure. The next mysterious thing is a cone-shaped monument found in the Sea of Galilee in Israel. This monument was discovered accidentally by sonar scanning in 2003, but the findings were published only in 2013. The monument weighs 60,000 tons. It was once submerged by rising waters. Archaeologists say the monument is enigmatic because they can't figure out where it's from. They don't know what it's connected to or its function. So this big and unusual thing remains a mystery. Now let's move to Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. This place offers you one of the most archaeologically significant sites in the world. Why is it important? Well, it has massive carved stones about 11,000 years old. To put it in perspective, they're 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. Ancient people placed these stones before they began farming or crafting metal tools or pottery. So the existence of this place goes against the chronology of civilization we're familiar with, where people farmed first and built second. Apparently, it wasn't like that. In any case, a good question is, what was the purpose of this site? Was it built to worship some spirits? Yep, archaeologists believe it might be the world's oldest temple. Okay, say this with me. Paleodictyon notusum. Yeah, I know it sounds like a chemical formula. This is a living fossil found deep down on the ocean floor. A creature makes these hexagonal burrows, that for sure. Yet scientists can't identify the artists. Now, what do I mean by living fossil? Well, Paleodictyon notusum is a creature believed to produce a burrow nearly identical to Paleodictyon fossils. Is it a worm-like animal that made them? Scientists don't know. One thing is clear, this isn't some random stuff created by geological forces. Now, speaking of fossils, take a look at this giant one. Its informal name is Godzilius. It was discovered in 2011 by an amateur paleontologist. This is a scientist who studies the history of life on Earth by analyzing fossil records. Anyway, back to Godzilius. It's almost 7 feet in length and 9 feet tall if you were to measure it upright. This fossil is 450 million years old, coming from the time when Cincinnati was underwater. It might be a fossilized algae mat, but some scientists have different opinions. This is a massive tunnel found in South America. The tunnel is at least 8,000 to 10,000 years old. At first, researchers discovered a couple of colossal burrows. They were enormous and neatly constructed. Geologists were amazed, saying they had never seen such structures before. There's no known geologic process to explain their formation. I mean, researchers have known about the burrows since the 1930s, but back then they believed that these tunnels were just some sort of archaeological construction, until they discovered huge claw marks on the walls and ceiling. They reasoned that some extinct species could be the ones to have left these marks. Many geologists strongly believe they found the burrows of giant ground sloths and armadillos. The structure is the largest known burrow from the Paleolithic age in the Amazon. Yet experts have many questions. How come such a deliberate-looking structure could form naturally? A researcher then discovered another strange cave. This one was hundreds of miles away from the massive tunnel. Fast forward, there are now more than 1,500 burrows from the Paleolithic age found in Brazil. What's even more interesting is that some of these caves are connected to tunnels that sometimes lead to chambers. I'll continue with a natural phenomenon. What if I told you that every year, especially in October, fireballs appear on the Mekong River in Thailand? According to legends, Naga fireballs are a call for Buddha to return to Earth. and river serpents are the ones making these calls. Well, that's a myth, but what does science say about it? Is it related to a flammable gas? There are no clear answers yet. These fireballs appear to rise from the water. They can go as high as almost 990 feet. They're like fireworks, disappearing rapidly. They typically glow with a reddish or orange color. I'll mention some legends too, because why not? They're thrilling. And it would be a shame not to include the one about the lost city of Atlantis. As you may know, the legend says that Atlantis submerged into the ocean around 11,000 years ago. Since then, not just scientists, but also treasure hunters and philosophers have been searching for the lost world. Could Bimini Road be a trace? In 1968, a diver found strange stones off the coast of North Bimini Island in the Bahamas. The stones look human-made. It's like they were evenly spaced out and laid in an orderly row. It baffled scientists, but not for long. Carbon dating analysis of the blocks revealed that geological forces created the road naturally. There weren't any tool marks or signs indicating that the blocks had been stacked or something. The research is continuing, but yeah, scientists generally believe that the rocks were created by erosion. Well, I guess the time of Atlantis hasn't come yet. Okay, picture this. You're wandering on the beach, and you see dozens of octopuses walking past. In 2017, a group of people from Wales witnessed exactly this. Why did these creatures come out of the ocean? No one knows the answer. The group reported that they had seen 20 to 30 octopi crawling on the sand. The people looked for some signs of injury, but found nothing. They said that they had carried the animals back to the ocean. Interestingly, these creatures kept crawling onto the shore when people were asleep. Experts say that it's hard to be sure of the reason that pushed the animals to the beach without conducting a physical examination. They're still speculating about the reason behind this unusual and rare occurrence. Could it be overcrowding? Furthermore, the octopi were well armed. A separate study points out that the more fishers hunt large animals that feed on octopuses, the more the octopus population grows. Maybe that's why these creatures have to go farther to find food or shelter. But without proper research, these are only theories. There's a lot we don't know about space, too. So here's a bonus fact about the yellowish source of life in the solar system. Scientists have discovered a new type of wave inside the sun. These waves move in the opposite direction to the sun's rotation. Plus, they move super fast, so fast that it's beyond our understanding. Researchers have different theories about the function of the waves. If they figure out their role, this could give them additional insight into the processes happening inside the sun. And yes, the octopi were well armed. Now, how about some surreal hidden places to check out? Grab a flashlight and your backpack, and bon voyage! The trip starts in the mountainous country of Switzerland. You travel to the town of Waltensburg in the eastern part of the country. It's raining and it's very cold, but you still make your way to the bottom part of a mountain, where your first adventure awaits. After climbing up high in the mountains, you see a strangely shaped castle. To get there, you must walk up an extremely narrow pathway. Don't look down, you think to yourself. You tighten the straps of your backpack and manage to walk along the pass. Standing at the door of the castle, you really can't believe what you see. A 13th century fortress built entirely of stone. Today, all that is left of Krafenstein Castle is mainly its ruins, but their condition is good enough to get an idea of what the place looked like back in its glory days. You take your time to explore the castle inside, but honestly, this place gives you the chills and you're ready to move on. The next place on the list is Turkey. A plane and then a car ride later, you arrive in the city of Çorum in the northern part of the country. On the outskirts of Çorum, you find a valley filled with old, overgrown mountains and see the beginning of the trail you're about to hike. The way is extremely steep, but it leads to a secret door carved in the mountain. Congratulations! You've just arrived at Kapilikaya. The huge door is a massive arched stone that blocks the entrance to a hidden building. Experts think it has existed since the 2nd century BCE. Unfortunately, the huge door won't open, so what's hidden inside is a mystery today. It's guessed that there is a room inside. Some locals say there's a treasure hidden there too. But until today, no one has managed to enter the place to check. Okay, it's time to get moving before night falls. Next, you get the unique opportunity to travel to Ethiopia. Wandering around the city of Lalibela, you stumble upon a huge pit carved in the ground. You approach it carefully, and soon enough, you see a magnificent terracotta building. So richly detailed, it leaves you mesmerized. But that's not all. There are 10 other pits just like this one, hiding King Lalibela's 12th century buildings. All 11 constructions are different from one another, yet share a similar recognizable style. They were hand-carved over the span of 24 years, only with the help of chisels, which is unbelievable given that these buildings are up to 50 feet high. That's about as tall as 5 African elephants stacked on top of each other, if you could do that. This unconventional way of construction made them entirely monolithic, meaning they were carved out of just one gigantic piece of rock. Pretty impressive, huh? Once you leave Ethiopia, you grab a flight to southern Italy, right there on the tip of the boot. No hiking is needed here. Whew! Your friend takes you to a site called Sassi di Matera. It's a Paleolithic city carved in the slope of a steep hill. You might feel like you've traveled in time here, as local stone houses and ancient buildings are unlike anything you've ever seen before. The site, also known as De Sassi, is suspected to be one of the first human settlements in Italy, dating back to over 9,000 years ago. Wandering around the town, you might get invited inside one of the cave-like houses. Oh, and as weird as it may sound, some of the streets run on top of people's homes. Talk about Paleolithic urban planning. You're probably becoming an expert on rock-cut architecture by now, but there are still a few sites left on your list. Next off, you head to Slovenia to visit the world's largest cave castle. This medieval castle was built on top of a 400-foot-high cliff and was designed to be impenetrable. Luckily for you, security is much more relaxed today. Still, if you're looking for a more challenging and less touristy way inside, you can get into the castle through one of its many underground tunnels. They were built over 800 years ago for the owner of the castle. He needed secret passageways to sneak supplies. Today, Pajama Castle is both enchanting and mysterious. I'd say it depends on whether it's a warm sunny day or a cold stormy night. After this medieval experience, you head on to visit Petra, a magnificent Jordanian monument found in the middle of the desert. To get around here, you'll need a large supply of water and sunscreen because it's going to get hot. But this site is worth it. The city of Petra is a marvel of the ancient world. Back in the 4th century BCE, this region was a trading hub at the crossroads of commercial routes. Petra was a wealthy city, home to the Nabateans, an Arab Bedouin tribe that thrived in the region for many years. The rock-carved gate-like structure Petra is famous for is called the Pharaoh's Treasure. It stands at the main entrance to the site and is said to have a treasure hidden inside. You might feel tempted to check it out for yourself, but that's an adventure for another trip. For now, you hop on another plane ride, this time to the Americas. First, you visit the USA, more specifically, the mountainous state of Colorado. You make your way to Mesa Verde National Park. There, in between the greenery and abundant vegetation, you'll find over 600 dwellings built in the cave beneath the cliff, carved deep into the mountainside. This ancient village is now considered a heritage site. The local Puebloan tribe built it back in the 1190s. One of its main buildings is called the Cliff Palace. It's a multi-story construction built from sandstone and mud mortar. The palace alone housed over 150 rooms. If you're feeling sporty, you might want to visit the Balcony House. To get there, you'll have to climb a 32-foot ladder. You'll get to see a mid-sized village of 38 rooms, including 2 kivas. Those are traditional chambers that were built by the Puebloans for ceremonial purposes. Still in the U.S., you make your way to the hills of South Dakota. You're there to visit one of the world's most impressive human-made sculptures on Mount Rushmore. What's so mysterious about this place, you might ask? Well, during Mount Rushmore's construction, a 70-foot-long secret tunnel was built behind the head of Abraham Lincoln. The tunnel was supposed to hold all the documents and artifacts important to the United States history. After the designers thought it through, they decided it was better to hide them in a safe box in the floor of the tunnel. The box holds the history of how Mount Rushmore came to be carved, as well as a brief history of the U.S. and the 4 presidents depicted on the mountain. Amazing, right? Now, you're headed down to Machu Picchu, a South American site hidden between the Peruvian mountains. Machu Picchu itself is already a mystery. Researchers still don't know why or even how the ancient Incan civilization managed to engineer the stone-built citadel all the way back in 1450 CE. To get there, you must endure a 3-day hike, reaching the impressive altitude of 8,000 feet above sea level. Or you can get a train, but that's no fun, right? You're here to check on a relatively new discovery. Back in 2010, French engineer David Crespi was taking measurements of the Inca ruins when he noticed a door he had never seen before. It was sealed off by stones. He went back to the site a few months later with an electromagnetic scanner. The scanner, which could detect objects behind walls, showed there were copious quantities of metals behind that sealed door. The researcher contacted the Peruvian authorities requesting to remove the rocks, but they didn't authorize it. As of today, the door is still locked. Whew, this trip was long, wasn't it? Make sure to get some rest, Indiana Jones.
On October 30th, 1759, the inhabitants of the Middle East were jolted awake by an earthquake. Cracks appeared in the walls of their homes, roofs began to crumble. People ran out of their homes and gathered in open areas. But because of strong shocks, they kept losing their footing and falling. A month later, there was another earthquake, but it turned out to be even stronger. Trees broke, houses collapsed, deep cracks appeared in the ground. The disaster lasted for 2 minutes. Oases, roads, and cities were destroyed. Incredibly, Baalbek's ancient buildings withstood earthquakes. Some historians state that this majestic and mysterious place was built during the Roman Empire, but many researchers disagree. Whatever the truth is, the city is one of the main archaeological phenomena of humankind. The most amazing building of Baalbek is the Temple of Jupiter. The inhabitants of the Roman Empire believed that Jupiter held power over lightning and thunder. The building looked like a platform with 54 columns. A massive roof rested on these columns. Today, you can only see 6 70-foot-high columns. Each of them consists of 3 sections and resembles a pencil. The cores of these pencils were made of lead. This made the columns exceptionally strong. Each of these pieces of stone weighed an incredible 80 tons. That's the weight of 35 Ford Explorer SUVs. Look, this is the largest block in the Great Pyramid of Giza. But compared to the blocks from Baalbek, it doesn't even look that impressive. The foundation under the Temple of Jupiter was preserved. That's how specialists figured out it consisted of about 25 monolithic stones, weighing 450 tons each. It means that the blocks from Baalbek weigh almost 4 times more than the blocks from Egypt. There are 3 more enormous limestone blocks in the foundation. They weigh 800 tons each. This is more than twice the weight of a Boeing 747 plane. Ancient builders must have had a hard time carving such giants from a piece of stone. And after that, they also had to pull them to the construction site and lift them to a significant height. Repeating these logistics would probably turn out to be a nightmare for present-day builders. To do this amount of work, they would need modern equipment. But Baalbek's constructors didn't have trucks, cranes with circular saws, or electricity. How did the builders of the past manage to do this? Scientists have a theory that includes ropes, winches, and lever systems. Naturally, the engineers of the past made all the gadgets from wood. Around 3,000 feet away from the ruins of the temple complex, there's a quarry. Archaeologists suppose that's where the stones for the construction were cut. They found a block of limestone there. It seemed to be too large, even for this incredible place. The monolith got called the Stone of the South. It was 65 feet long and 13 feet wide. The ancient builders didn't have time to completely separate it from its mother rock. A group of scientists from Austria estimated that this piece of limestone weighed more than 1,000 tons. That's like 3 Boeing aircraft or 160 African elephants. There was another surprise awaiting the archaeologists near the Stone of the South. It was the second monolith that weighed more than 1,200 tons. But the ancient builders didn't stop at that. They continued to work. In 2014, in the same quarry, German archaeologists unearthed a block that weighed 1,650 tons. No one has figured out yet why people of the past needed a piece of stone that weighed as much as 125 school buses. It's also unclear how they were going to move this giant and why they didn't finish the job. In any case, this third monolith is the largest processed piece of stone in human history. There are more questions than answers. Some researchers believe that people of the past had high-tech equipment. Others don't think so, but are eager to understand how the builders managed to move those stones. There's a huge number of ancient buildings and artifacts on the planet. Lots of them make researchers scratch their heads. Near the Pyramid of Djoser in Egypt, archaeologists have found a network of tunnels. This place is called Serapeum. It contains 24 sarcophagi weighing from 70 to 100 tons. The giant boxes are carved from a single piece of granite and covered with heavy lids. The sarcophagi are perfectly symmetrical. To the touch, their walls are as smooth as glass. Even with the current level of technology, this is very difficult to do. But the ancient Egyptians managed this feat. The Lycurgus cup is a priceless artifact and example of ancient nanotechnology. It's made of glass that can change its color. If you put a source of light in front of the cup, it turns green. If the light is behind the goblet, it becomes deep red. In this case, the figure of Greek king Lycurgus turns pale purple. Scientists understood how this color change worked only at the end of the 20th century. Through microscopes, they saw nanoparticles of silver, gold, and copper. They had been added to the glass matrix. Thanks to this, you can observe a color change called dichroism. Interestingly, the gold and silver were grounded into a fine dust. It's almost impossible to do this by accident. Most likely, the ancient experts knew for sure what they were doing. Bolivia has a curious place called Puma Punku. It looks as if an ancient giant played there with an enormous construction set. And after the game, they forgot to put the pieces back into the box. But there are no giants, and the huge stone blocks were carved by ancient builders over 1,500 years ago. Some of the rocks weigh 100 tons. The blocks were brought to an altitude of almost 13,000 feet above sea level from the quarry 60 miles away from the construction site. There's no forest in that area. This means the builders couldn't use trees to make wooden rollers. The monument belongs to the Inca civilization. Scientists are sure they didn't know anything about wheels. In 1992, the inhabitants of a Chinese village decided to drain a pond. Their ancestors had been using it to wash clothes and catch fish for hundreds of years. They kept pumping the water out for 17 days. At the bottom of the reservoir, they made an unexpected discovery. The villagers saw an entrance to a cave going down to a depth of 100 feet. The incredible find was named the Longyu Caves. Unknown builders carved out 320,000 square feet of galleries. There are separate rooms, bridges, pools, and columns that support the ceiling. The walls of the cave are covered with strange carved lines and patterns. Scientists haven't found any information about who built the caves and why they did it. The construction technology also remains a mystery. Antonio Stradivari lived in Italy in the 18th century. He created musical instruments. More than 600 of his works have survived to this day. 500 of them are violins. One of the instruments was sold at auction for $16 million. The violins made by this master sound clear and deep. Researchers can't understand why Stradivarius instruments produce such unique sounds. Perhaps it's all about the varnish the master used to cover the violins. The answer may also lie in the wood the instruments are made of. In those days, Europe had a cold climate. Because of this, the wood became denser, and the instruments made of it sounded especially pleasing to the ear. In the Indian city of Delhi, there's a 23-foot-high pole. It weighs 6.5 tons and is made of 98% wrought iron. The 1,600-year-old pillar has no signs of rust or decay. Scientists believe that the monument is so well preserved thanks to the dry weather and the chemical composition of the metal. It might be resistant to corrosion. And still, researchers don't know how the blacksmiths managed to make an iron pillar that's not afraid of rust. It seems like a tough feat, even for modern metallurgists. The Al-Nasla rock is divided into two parts by a perfectly straight slit. Each boulder stands on a small pedestal. Some people believe this is the evidence of ancient laser technology. But geologists think the split happened due to the ground shifting or natural vibrations that occurred under the rock. This process led to the appearance of the crack. it had been deepening for thousands of years, and gradually, the natural monument took the form you can see today.
Ah, that's funny. Well, everything is when you're a giant hyena, Pachecrocuta. If you want to picture how animals from ancient times look like, just imagine them way bigger with larger and sharper teeth. And wait, like that isn't enough? Yup, you had to be one mighty beast to survive in such times when everything around you is like 5XL. This hyena was up to 3 feet tall with a weight of 400 pounds. That's the size of a modern lion and around 3 times bigger than today's hyena. The ancient one also had shorter legs, which is also the reason plenty of prehistoric creatures went extinct. Over time, they ran out of food, but couldn't run fast or long enough to catch prey. Also, they couldn't escape quickly enough if there was some bigger guy nearby. Ancient and modern hyenas have quite similar habits. Diet, meat, and meat. They both prefer to steal food from other usually smaller predators rather than go hunting on their own. And of course, they're both always smiling at everyone around. Cheese! You always somehow picture sharks as those marine animals we should be afraid of, right? Not whales. They're mostly good-natured, eating their plankton, spraying out water through that hole in their backs and stuff. And of course, they could get a little clumsy from time to time, so they turn over a ship. Anyway, they're not that into hunting humans. Well, if we all lived in the time of this 50-foot, 50-ton whale, Leviathan, I like to call Toothy, let's just say going to the beach would never be the same. The beast weighed like 6 elephants and was longer than a truck. Oh yeah, about that Toothy thing? This whale had teeth longer than your palm and a quite refined hunting instinct. So it went after all marine animals, including other whales too. Its only rival was the megalodon itself, the only biggest and scariest shark that ever lived on our planet. Okay, of course, this list is full of giant and dangerous animals with extra sharp teeth who you're certainly glad they went extinct. But there's also some close relative to a human ancestor here too. Hello, distant cousin? Paranthropus. So our cousin P had a big brain, well, at least for those times, and good reflexes, which is why they could defend themselves against some bigger and less brainy creatures that were after them. They mostly ate plants, roots, nuts, soft fruits, young leaves, probably insects, and seeds. They were around 5 feet tall and 150 pounds in weight. Not that big compared to other prehistoric mammals, but still big enough to survive those tough times. Way to go, P! The next one is, yes, I'm very happy these things went extinct, prehistoric mammal, Gorgonopsia. They were something between mammals and reptiles with, of course, very, very big 5-inch saber-like teeth, an 18-inch long skull, and the size of a modern bear. At their beginnings, these guys were really small, no bigger than a dog. After a while, evolution did its thing and turned them into the biggest carnivores of their time, which was over 250 million years ago. I wasn't around then. Scientists still don't know if they had clear skin, fur, or scales, but they do know these beasts had rather long legs compared to the rest of their body, which means they could run much faster than many other animals from those times. Andrewsarchus, or Andy, my nickname for it, is everything you would attribute to today's predators, such as tigers, wolves, or hyenas. Only a bit more intimidating version, of course, with extremely sharp teeth. Who would have thought the biggest meat-eating mammal that ever lived is actually a part of the family where pigs, camels, and antelopes came from? It had the size of a modern bison, with a weight of at least half a ton. Andy wasn't that picky with the menu, so it went after most other animals that lived back then, which was around 40 million years ago. It seems ancient times were those where tigers or some other predators were afraid of pigs, unlike today. Yup, step back, Terminator pig, Entelodon, is on its way. Okay, research actually showed they were more like hippos, whales, and its cousin Andy. But this cool nickname has already been given, so we can't go back. Early Terminator pigs were no bigger than today's swines, but they grew to become cow size over time. They also had short snouts, but a couple of million years later, evolution decided that's not scary enough and made their lower and upper jaws much longer. Oh, and they got an even sharper set of canines, a special How to Creep Your Rivals edition. Whew! Finally, an ancient mammal we don't have to be afraid of. Well, at least if we're not in its way, because if this giant accidentally stepped on you, squish. But at least its menu consisted of plants, so we would be safe at some point. Let me introduce you to the gentle giant Thunder Beast, Brontotherium. It had quite a sturdy nasal horn, weighed 3 tons, and was 16 feet in length, which is bigger than a modern rhino. The size, unfortunately, didn't help it much. Andy was always just breathing down its neck, preying at it and its companions. Such a list definitely can't go without the menacing saber-toothed cat. Around 4 feet long, 100 pounds, agile, completely capable of hunting in coordinated packs. But you know cats, they like to brag about the catch they got on their own. That's our Megan, Megatherion. You can find her and her companions all over the world, in Europe, Asia, North America, and Africa. Now, we often think all big cats are into running after their prey, but Megan wasn't built for speed at all, nor did it sprint after her prey like some other cats. No, she preferred to wait for the prey to get closer. She would choose a good spot, climb up some tall tree, hide, and simply chill. After a while, some innocent herbivores would go there to drink some water, and bam! Surprise! Megan's down. Her hunting style is something we see in leopards today. Teeth were her main weapon, so gotta watch out for those big upper canines. Oh, finally a name I can more easily pronounce, so I don't have to come up with my own. The giant short-faced bear. This beast could run up to 40 miles per hour. After it cornered its prey, the bear would rear up to its full height, 13 feet, so the poor animal knew nothing good was about to come. Cave bears usually prefer vegetables, but as far as this short-faced one was concerned, nah, meat is way better. It liked to hunt as well as collect what other predators would leave behind. Also, as far as is known, apparently no one ever asked this short-faced bear, "Hey, why the long face?" Leo, the prehistoric lion, Thylacoleo. Gee, sounds like a pharmaceutical. Anyway, 5 feet long, 200 pounds, insanely strong jaws, sharp teeth, long retractable claws, muscular body. Hey, it's me. No, not really. It also had a surprisingly powerful tail. Leo actually comes from the land down under, where ancestral kangaroos lived, and they also had quite strong tails to balance themselves. Okay, speaking of kangaroos, here's one small surprise: Leo's roots. You would think kangaroos, koala bears, and giant wombats were there just to live a happy life until they became someone's breakfast. But their family somehow raised an animal that looked like a saber-toothed tiger, but with bigger teeth. Yes, Leo, way to go, breaking the stereotypes. Leo was somewhere at the top of the food chain in his times, even though he had one quite strong rival, a giant monitor lizard, Megalania, or even some plus-size crocodile, Quincana. Okay, move guys, this is not a video about reptiles, wait your turn. Prehistoric age, dinosaurs ruled all over the region, making a mess, while other animals shiver in fear and hide from them. Hey, not so fast, dinos! There's Mr. R, Rapenomamus, a mysterious mammal that decided to stand up to the authorities. He showed up 130 million years ago and was a badger-like 3-foot-long animal. Doesn't sound much compared to the T-Rex and bigger dinos, but was way bigger than some of those feathery dinosaurs from the same time. Not only that, he would eat them. We don't know how exactly, but let's just say Mr. R had his own ways. I'm guessing it was for breakfast.
Footsteps pounded behind him. Heart racing, he lunged toward the towering statue, fingers fumbling with the hidden crevice. No time. He shoved it inside just as shouts closed in. A deep breath, loud heartbeat. Then he ran, vanishing into the dark, leaving his secret buried in stone, waiting to be found. Throughout history, statues haven't just been silent guardians of the past. They've been hiding places for secrets, some deliberately sealed away, others stumbled upon by pure chance. See the most mysterious of them. In 2016, as Australian experts prepared a 645-year-old statue for auction, they uncovered a hidden secret: an ancient banknote tucked inside its hollowed head. Issued in 1371 under Emperor Zhu Yonzang, the note was worth 1,000 copper coins, or 28 grams of silver. More strikingly, it carried a grim warning. Despite passing through multiple owners, the hidden bill remained undiscovered for centuries. A rare relic from an era when paper money was still a novelty, the note was soon listed for auction, its journey through time continuing into the modern world. Statues became more than just symbols. They were guardians, keepers of history, and sometimes even life-saving tools. In 2017, restoration experts working on an 18th century statue in Spain made a remarkable discovery. Hidden within the statue's hollow interior were 2 letters written in 1777, providing insights into daily life, local customs, and the economy of the time. Similarly, in 2023, during renovations at the United States Military Academy in West Point, a box was discovered inside the marble base of a statue depicting the hero Tadeusz Kosciuszko. Placed there nearly 200 years ago, this time capsule offers a tangible connection to the institution's storied past. The mystery surrounding statues and their potential to hide secrets extends to some of the world's most iconic monuments. Few places are as shrouded in mystery as the Great Sphinx of Giza. For centuries, archaeologists, historians, and explorers have speculated about what might lie hidden beneath its massive limestone figure. Some people thought the Sphinx concealed the legendary Hall of Records, a supposed library containing ancient knowledge, possibly even lost wisdom from Atlantis. In recent years, advancements in ground-penetrating radar technology have revealed voids beneath the Sphinx, leading many to believe that the statue may hide undiscovered chambers or passageways, some possibly linked to royal tombs or hidden structures. The potential of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx has captivated imaginations for generations. But what is perhaps even more intriguing is the recent work done by researchers from New York University, who studied the environmental forces that shaped the Sphinx. After recreating ancient wind patterns, the researchers concluded that the Sphinx may have originally been shaped by natural erosion before humans further refined its form. Such revelations open up new avenues for understanding the monument's purpose, as well as the cultural and spiritual significance it held back then. The ancient Egyptians revered Sobek, the crocodile-headed god of power and the Nile, and often mummified crocodiles to honor him. These creatures were placed in temples or tombs as offerings to the gods or to ensure their safe passage to the afterlife. Recently, a group of researchers dove into an interesting study about a crocodile that received the mummification treatment from Egyptian embalmers. They used a CT scanner to uncover all sorts of fascinating details about how this crocodile met its maker and what happened to its body afterward. For the ancient Egyptians, animals weren't just pets, they were major players in their rituals, acting as a bridge between humans and the deities. Hawks, for example, were associated with Horus, the sun deity, since their flight brought them closer to the sun. Cats were linked to Bastet, the fierce and protective mother deity. Crocodiles were among the favorite animals for mummification. These reptiles were seen as symbols of Sobek, the lord of the Nile, whose presence announced the annual flooding that brought much-needed water and fertile soil for farming. In the past, studying such artifacts could mean damaging the mummy, but thanks to modern imaging techniques, the researchers were able to examine the crocodile while keeping it intact. X-rays and CT scans revealed that the crocodile's digestive system was packed with small stones called gastroliths, which crocs often ingest to aid digestion and maintain buoyancy. Amid those stones, they even found a metal fish hook and a fish. This suggests that large mummified crocodiles were likely caught in the wild using hooks baited with fish. This almost aligns with what ancient Greek historians wrote about life in Egypt. almost because the Greeks believed that Egyptians used pigs to lure the crocodiles. So, as you've noticed, researchers and archaeologists use cutting-edge technology and meticulous hands-on work to uncover the secrets of ancient civilizations. The process begins with surveys using ground-penetrating radar and 3D scanning to detect hidden chambers, tunnels, or anomalies beneath the surface. Once a promising site is identified, careful excavation begins. Layers of soil and debris are removed slowly, ensuring that no detail is lost. The exhibition of Rijksmuseum Museum in Amsterdam features a remarkable 15th century Tibetan gilt copper statue of Guhya Samaja Akshobhya. This figure, symbolizing the unity of opposing forces and a higher state of enlightenment, was previously unknown to the museum's collection. Recent examinations of this statue have revealed hidden relics and scrolls within its hollow structure, offering profound insights into the religious practices of the time. The exhibition showcases over 75 masterpieces from Asia, including the newly acquired Guhya Samaja Akshobhya statue, highlighting the intricate craftsmanship and spiritual significance embedded within such artifacts. In the heart of Verona, a secret lay hidden for decades within the bronze statue of Juliet. Sculpted in 1969, she became a symbol of love, touched by countless visitors seeking romance and luck. But beneath her worn surface, Juliet was silently guarding something extraordinary. Over time, tiny cracks formed from years of affectionate caresses. Through them, lovers slipped letters, whispered confessions, desperate pleas, and eternal promises. Some tossed in keys, sealing their love with padlocks and hiding the proof inside her hollow frame. In 2014, restoration experts made a stunning discovery. As they worked to mend the statue, hundreds of love notes and rusted keys spilled out, forgotten vows locked away in the heart of Juliet herself. Statues often act as symbols of power and might. However, in more recent times, statues have also been used to convey messages for future generations. The concept of the time capsule, an object or collection of items placed in a container, sealed, and then buried or hidden for later discovery, has a long history. And in modern times, statues have served as the perfect vessels for these capsules, allowing people to communicate with future generations in a very tangible way. In 2014, as old workers carefully removed the golden lion atop Boston's Old State House for restoration, they made a startling discovery. Something rattled inside its hollow head. A Boston Globe article from 1901 had once mentioned a hidden time capsule, but over the years it had faded into legend. Then, a sculptor's descendant unearthed a long-forgotten letter confirming the truth. Inside the lion's head lay newspapers, photographs, autographs, and letters from Boston's past. Messages sealed away for over a century. As the capsule was opened, it felt like history itself was holding its breath. The officials planned to continue the tradition, adding modern artifacts before sealing the lion's secret once more, until the 22nd century unveils it again. We don't know if they carry on with it, though. Advancements in imaging technology have allowed researchers to uncover hidden details within famous sculptures without damaging them. In 2014, restoration experts in Mexico made a shocking discovery while examining a 300-year-old wooden statue. Real human teeth were hidden beneath its serene face. The revelation came not by sight, but by technology. When preservationists took an X-ray of the statue, expecting to find structural details, they instead saw a perfect set of teeth embedded in the mouth, unlike other historic statues from the region, which sometimes contained real hair people donated.